Elena Rossi never imagined her last night of freedom would come at 22, dragged through marble corridors in a stolen evening gown while men in tailored suits appraised her like livestock. Her father's debts had a price, and she was it. In an underground auction beneath Monaco's glittering surface, she became Lot 47, displayed under harsh lights while voices shouted numbers that made her stomach turn. Then silence fell. A man entered the room, and every predator inside suddenly looked like prey. Dominic Varela didn't need to shout his bid. He simply claimed what he wanted. Her. If you're watching, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city. I want to see how far Elena's story travels. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. Turit. The bookstore smelled like old paper and coffee, the kind of place where Elena Rossi felt safest. She sat in the corner near the philosophy section, sketching in the margins of her literature notes, a habit Professor Marchetti hated but never quite managed to break her of. Outside the window, Milan moved with its usual rhythm, scooters weaving through traffic, tourists photographing the Duomo, businessmen shouting into phones. Everything was ordinary. Everything was safe. Her phone buzzed. Papa's name lit up the screen. "Hey," she said, tucking a strand of dark hair behind her ear. "I'm at Elena." Her father's voice cracked, not the usual warmth, something broken underneath. "Elena, I need you to listen very carefully." The book in her lap suddenly felt heavier. "What's wrong?" "I need you to go home. Pack a bag. Not much. Just clothes for a few days. Can you do that for me?" "Papa, you're scaring me." I know, sweetheart, but I need you to trust me. Go home." "Pack. Wait for me there. Don't answer the door for anyone. Don't." His voice broke completely. "I'm so sorry." The line went dead. Elena sat frozen, the phone still pressed against her ear. Around her, people browsed shelves, debated translations, lived normal lives. Her hands started shaking. She gathered her things, notebook, pens, the cheap canvas bag she'd carried since freshman year. Her mind kept circling back to the tone in her father's voice. Not anger, not frustration, terror. The walk home took 15 minutes. She counted every step, trying to outpace the dread building in her chest. Their apartment sat above a tailor's shop in a neighborhood that had seen better decades. Elena climbed the narrow stairs, her key already in hand. Inside, everything looked the same. The worn sofa, her father's reading glasses on the coffee table, the framed photo of her mother who'd died when Elena was 7. She packed like he'd asked. Jeans, sweaters, her favorite books. It felt absurd, like preparing for a trip she hadn't planned and didn't want to take. Then she waited. 6 o'clock became 7. 7 became 8. The tailor downstairs closed shop, the metal grate rattling down with finality. Elena made tea she didn't drink, tried to read, checked her phone every 30 seconds. At 9:15, footsteps echoed in the stairwell. "Papa?" The door opened. Her father stepped inside and Elena's breath caught. Giovanni Rossi looked like he'd aged a decade in the hours since she'd seen him that morning. His suit, usually pristine, a point of pride for a man who'd built his small import business from nothing, was wrinkled, the collar dark with sweat. But it was his eyes that made her stomach drop. They held the kind of emptiness that came after all the fighting was done. "Papa, what happened?" He closed the door, locked it, then turned to face her, and she saw his hands were shaking worse than hers. "I made mistakes," he said quietly. "Bad ones. For years I've been making them, and He stopped, started again. "There are people. Dangerous people. I owed them money, and when I couldn't pay, I borrowed more from someone else to cover it, and how much? Elena, how much do you owe?" The number he said made the room tilt. "That's not possible," Elena whispered. "We don't have that kind of money. We've never had—" "I know. Then how were you ever going to—" The answer hit her before he could speak. She saw it in his face, in the way he couldn't quite meet her eyes. "No," she said. "No, Papa. Whatever you're thinking." "They gave me an option." His voice was barely audible. "One option, to settle everything." Elena backed away until her legs hit the sofa. "What kind of option?" "There's a man. Someone who buys—" He couldn't finish. Buys what? But she knew, she knew. He pays debts in exchange for... Giovanni's face crumpled. They want you, Elena. In 3 days they're coming for you, and if you're not, they'll kill us both anyway. The floor seemed to fall away beneath her feet. You told them yes. It wasn't a question. I had no choice. There's always a choice. Elena's voice cracked into something sharp and jagged. You could have told me. We could have run. They would have found us. These aren't men you run from. These are the kind of men who own judges and politicians, who make people disappear. So instead you sold me. The words hung between them like poison. Giovanni sank into a chair, his face in his hands. I thought I could fix it. All these years I kept thinking I'd find a way. One more deal, one more loan. But it kept getting worse, and now... His shoulders shook. You're my daughter, my only family, and I've destroyed you. Elena wanted to scream, to throw things, to shake him until he took it back, fixed it, made it not real. Instead, she heard herself ask, Who is he? The man who's buying me? I don't know his name. They just said he's connected, very connected, that he'll pay what I owe if they bring you to Monaco. Monaco. There's an auction, private, for men who... He couldn't say it. Elena's legs gave out. She sat hard on the sofa, her mind racing through impossible calculations. 3 days. She had 3 days to run, hide, disappear. But where? How? She had 200 euros in her bank account and a student ID. No passport. Her father kept it locked in his desk drawer, had always promised to give it to her when she needed it. Another lie. Another trap. I could go to the police, she said, but even as the words left her mouth, she knew how stupid they sounded. Elena, these people, they own the police. The ones they don't own, they frighten. And if you run, if you make this harder... He looked at her with bottomless despair. They'll make you wish you hadn't. The next 3 days passed like a nightmare in slow motion. Elena tried to run anyway. On the second day, she made it as far as the train station before 2 men in expensive suits appeared on either side of her. They didn't touch her, didn't say a word, just stood there, close enough that she could smell their cologne, until she turned around and walked back to the apartment. Her father wept when she came home. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Stop saying that, Elena told him. It doesn't help. On the third day, they came for her at sunset. 3 men this time. One of them carried a garment bag and a small cosmetics case. The second held an envelope, which he handed to Giovanni without speaking. The third, the one who seemed to be in charge, looked at Elena with the flat professional assessment of someone evaluating merchandise. You're shorter than the photo suggested, he said in accented Italian, but that's manageable. Come. I need to... Elena looked at her father, who stood frozen by the door, the envelope clutched in both hands. You need to come now, the man said, or this becomes unpleasant. Elena had imagined this moment 1,000 times in the last 72 hours. In some versions, she fought, screamed, made them drag her out. In others, she crumpled, begged, fell apart completely. But standing there in the apartment that had been her whole world, looking at the father who'd raised her and ruined her in the same breath, she felt something unexpected settle over her. Numbness. Okay, she heard herself say. Let me get my bag. You won't need it. Everything has been provided. The one with the garment bag stepped forward. The bathroom. You'll change there. Elena took the bag, walked to the small bathroom she'd used her entire life, locked the door even though she knew it was pointless. Inside the bag was a dress, deep emerald silk, designer label, worth more than every piece of clothing she owned combined. The cosmetics case held makeup she didn't know how to apply properly, and shoes that fit perfectly but looked designed for someone else's life. She changed, looked at herself in the mirror, and barely recognized the woman staring back. The dress clung in ways that made her feel exposed, vulnerable, priced. When she emerged, the men nodded approval. Better, the leader said. The car is waiting. Can I... Elena looked at her father one more time. Can I say goodbye? You already have. But Giovanni moved toward her anyway, and the men allowed it. He pulled her into an embrace that smelled like his cologne and cigarettes, and the life she'd never get back. "I love you," he whispered. "I'm sorry. I know." She pulled away before she could break, before the numbness could crack. They led her downstairs. A black Mercedes idled at the curb, windows tinted so dark she couldn't see inside. The leader opened the back door. "Get in." Elena climbed inside. The door closed with a sound like a coffin sealing. The interior smelled like leather and money. Beside her sat a woman in her 40s, blonde and beautiful in the way that came from expensive maintenance. "First time?" the woman asked in English. Elena just looked at her. "Don't worry, darling. The fear gets easier." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I'm here to prepare you. Make sure you don't embarrass anyone. The auction has standards." "Auction?" Elena repeated. The word tasted like ash. "In Monaco. Very exclusive, very private." The woman opened a leather portfolio. "Your buyer has already been selected, actually. These things are usually predetermined. The auction itself is more theater, but you'll still need to perform your part." "Who is he?" "I'm not at liberty to say, but you should feel fortunate." The woman's smile turned sharper. "He rarely attends these events personally. The fact that he's coming at all is quite the compliment." The car pulled away from the curb. Elena watched through the tinted window as her neighborhood disappeared. The tailor shop, the bookstore, the cafe where she'd spent Sunday mornings reading, all of it sliding away like a life that had belonged to someone else. The drive took 6 hours. They crossed into France at a checkpoint where the guards waved them through without looking. Elena watched the landscape change from familiar to foreign, each kilometer a countdown to something irreversible. The woman, who never offered her name, spent the trip instructing Elena on what to expect, how to stand, how to walk, which questions to answer, and which to leave beautifully silent. "You're a virgin," the woman said at one point, not quite a question. Elena's cheeks burned. "That's none of your... It's the only business that matters, darling. Increases the value considerably. Don't worry, they'll verify before the auction, but discreetly. Well, relatively discreetly." Elena turned her face to the window and tried not to vomit. They arrived in Monaco after midnight. The city glittered like something out of a dream, harbor lights reflecting off yachts that cost more than buildings, casinos glowing like landed stars. Beautiful. Poisonous. The car descended into an underground garage beneath a building with no name. They rode an elevator down, not up, into levels Elena suspected didn't appear on any official blueprint. "This way." The woman led her through corridors that smelled like expensive perfume and fear. Other women moved through the halls, some in dresses like Elena's, others in robes, a few in nothing but lingerie and resignation. No one spoke. No one made eye contact. They reached a room, small, windowless, containing only a bed, a vanity, and a bathroom barely bigger than a closet. "Rest," the woman said. "Tomorrow will be long. Someone will come for you at 6 to do your hair and makeup. The auction begins at 8. "And if I refuse?" Elena asked, even though she knew the answer. The woman's expression softened slightly, almost pitied. "Then they'll drug you and auction you unconscious. But you'll wake up in the same place either way. At least this way, you'll remember your choices." She left. The door locked from the outside. Elena sat on the edge of the bed and waited for the panic to hit, for the tears, for something. But the numbness held. She lay back on sheets that were softer than anything she'd ever touched and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere above her, Monaco lived its glittering life. And somewhere in that city, the man who'd bought her sight unseen was preparing to collect his purchase. The next 18 hours passed in a fog of preparation. They woke her at 5:30. A different woman this time, younger, kinder-faced, who brought coffee Elena couldn't drink and pastries she couldn't eat. "I know you're scared," the young woman said softly. "But I've seen hundreds of girls come through here. The ones who survive are the ones who find a way to turn off the part of themselves that feels it." "How?" Elena whispered. "You pretend you're someone else. You step outside yourself and watch it happen to her. Not to you, to the girl in the mirror who isn't quite real." At 6, the beauticians arrived. They worked with efficient silence, washing, cutting, styling her hair into something elegant and expensive. The makeup took an hour. When they finished, Elena looked at her reflection and saw exactly what the young woman had described. A stranger. Beautiful, polished, and utterly hollow. At 7:30, they brought a new dress. This one was white, designer, strapless, fitted like it had been made specifically for her body. It probably had been. Time, someone said. They led her through more corridors, each one more opulent than the last. Oil paintings on the walls, marble floors. The money here wasn't just visible, it was aggressive. Finally, they reached a set of double doors. Through there, the woman from the car said, appearing beside her like a ghost. Walk to the center of the platform, face forward. Don't speak unless you are asked a direct question. Keep your expression neutral. And remember, this is already decided. You're just confirming the transaction. The doors opened. The room beyond was smaller than Elena had imagined. Intimate. No more than 30 men occupied the velvet chairs arranged in a semicircle around a raised platform. But their eyes, when they turned toward her, held the weight of appetites too large for ordinary rooms. Music played softly, classical, something that might have been beautiful under different circumstances. Elena walked forward. Each step felt like moving through water. The platform rose 6 inches off the floor, and when she stepped onto it, lights hit her from every angle. Nowhere to hide, nowhere to pretend she wasn't exactly what she was. A man in a tuxedo stood beside the platform with a tablet. Lot 47, he announced in French-accented English. 22 years old, university educated, verified status, opening bid, 2 million euros. Numbers started flying. Men raised tablets, pressed buttons. The price climbed with nauseating speed. 3 million. 4. 5. Elena kept her eyes fixed on a point above the crowd's heads. Used the young woman's trick. Stepped outside herself. Watched it happen to the girl on the platform. 7 million. 8. Then the room changed. Elena felt it before she saw it. The sudden stillness that fell over the crowd like a held breath. Men who'd been bidding aggressively lowered their tablets, shifted in their seats, looked toward the back of the room. She couldn't help it. She looked too. A man stood in the doorway. He was tall, over 6 feet, with dark hair and darker eyes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. His suit probably cost more than the cumulative net worth of everyone Elena had ever known. But it was something else that made the room shrink around him, something in the way he carried himself, like violence wrapped in civility, like a predator that had learned to walk upright. He didn't hurry, didn't speak, just crossed the room with the unhurried confidence of someone who'd never been told no in his life. The auctioneer's voice came out smaller than before. Mr. Varela, we weren't expecting 15 million, the man said. His voice was deep, accented with something Mediterranean that Elena couldn't quite place. Euros, final offer. Silence. Sir, the current bid is only 8. I'm aware. Dominic Varela's eyes never left Elena. 15 million. And we're done here. The auctioneer looked around the room. No one moved, no one dared. Sold. Lot 47 to Mr. Varela. It was over, just like that. Men began filing out, conversations resuming in hushed tones. But Elena couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but stand frozen on the platform while Dominic Varela approached. He stopped at the platform's edge. Up close, he was somehow worse, beautiful in the way sharp things were beautiful, dangerous. Elena Rossi. He said her name like he was tasting it. Come. It wasn't a request. Elena's legs moved. The girl in the mirror stepped down from the platform, followed the man who'd just bought her, back through the corridors, into an elevator that climbed and climbed. They emerged into a private garage. A car waited, black, sleek, probably worth more than her father's debts. Varela opened the door himself. Elena climbed inside. He settled into the seat beside her, and the driver pulled away without needing to be told where to go. For 5 minutes, neither of them spoke. Then Varela said, You're afraid. Elena turned to look at him. Wouldn't you be? Something flickered in his expression, not quite amusement, not quite approval. Yes, I would be. Are you going to hurt me? That depends entirely on you. The city lights blurred past. Elena watched Monaco disappear behind them as they climbed into hills she didn't recognize. Where are we going? Home, Varela said simply. Your home. For now. He glanced at her, those dark eyes unreadable. There are rules. If you follow them, your life will be comfortable. If you don't, he left the threat unfinished. What kind of rules? Don't try to leave. Don't contact anyone from your previous life. Don't ask questions about my business. Don't make me regret spending 15 million euros on you. Elena's hands clenched in her lap. And what do I get in return? You get to live. He said it matter-of-factly, like it was obvious, like it was generous. That's not living. It's more than most people in your situation receive. The car climbed higher. The city disappeared completely, replaced by darkness, and the occasional glimpse of the sea reflecting moonlight. Finally, they turned through gates that opened automatically, up a private drive, and stopped in front of a house that Elena's brain initially refused to process as a house. It was a fortress, built into the cliff itself, all glass and stone and angles that seemed to defy physics, beautiful and terrible and utterly isolated. Varela stepped out, waited. Elena followed. Inside, the house was even more intimidating. Everything was clean lines and expensive materials. Art on the walls that probably belonged in museums, views that stretched for miles. A woman appeared, older, professional, wearing what looked like a uniform. Francesca will show you to your room, Varela said. You'll find everything you need there. Dinner is at 8. I expect you to join me. And if I don't? He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Then you'll discover how quickly comfort can be revoked. He disappeared down a hallway, leaving Elena with the woman named Francesca. This way, miss. Elena followed her up a staircase, down another corridor. The woman opened a door to reveal a bedroom that was bigger than Elena's entire apartment had been. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a bed that could sleep 4. A bathroom with a tub carved from marble. Your clothes are in the closet, Francesca said. Mr. Varela had everything selected based on your measurements. If you need anything, there's a phone by the bed. Dial 0. She left before Elena could ask any of the 1,000 questions crowding her throat. Elena stood in the center of the room, walked to the window, looked out at the sea and the darkness and the tiny lights of civilization far below. She tried the door, unlocked, tried the windows, sealed, probably bulletproof. Opened the closet to find dozens of dresses, shoes, clothes that fit perfectly and cost more than her education. Everything designed to make her comfortable in her cage. Elena sat on the edge of the bed and waited for the tears to come. But the numbness held. The stranger in the mirror stayed in control. At 7:45, she changed into one of the dresses, fixed her hair, applied lipstick with hands that barely shook. At 7:58, she made her way downstairs, following the sounds of movement until she found the dining room. Varela sat at the head of a table set for 2. He changed into something more casual, still expensive, but less armor-like. He looked up when she entered. Punctual, he observed. Good. Elena sat in the chair that had clearly been designated as hers. A man in chef's whites appeared, serving food Elena didn't taste, wine she didn't drink. Varela watched her. You're handling this better than most. How would you know? Because you're not the first. The words hit like a slap. How many? Does it matter? To me it does. He considered her for a long moment. You're the third in 5 years. The first tried to kill herself. The second ran and had to be retrieved. Both learned that resistance only makes things harder. What happened to them? They're no longer my concern. Elena's stomach turned. She set down her fork. I won't be your whore. No, Varela agreed calmly. You'll be my wife. The room tilted. Excuse me? In 3 months, we'll marry. A small ceremony. Legally binding. You'll take my name, occupy my home, and fulfill the role required of you. You can't just... People don't... In my world, they do. He sipped his wine. Your father's debt is erased. You're provided for, protected. All you have to do is play your part. And what part is that exactly? The devoted wife, the beautiful distraction, someone I can display at events without worrying about loyalty or betrayal. His eyes were cold. You'll learn quickly that in my line of work, trust is the rarest commodity. I can't trust anyone who has a choice to leave. But you have no choice, which makes you remarkably valuable. Elena's hands trembled. She hid them in her lap. You're insane. I'm practical. He leaned back in his chair. You should eat. You'll need your strength. I'm not hungry. Eat anyway. It wasn't a suggestion. Elena picked up her fork, forced down food that tasted like nothing. Across from her, Dominic Varela ate with the calm efficiency of a man completely in control. When the meal finally ended, he stood. Francesca will show you the rest of the house tomorrow. For tonight, return to your room. The door will remain unlocked, but I wouldn't recommend exploring on your own. The house has security measures that don't discriminate between intruders and residents who wander into the wrong spaces. Elena rose on shaking legs. Is that all? For now. He paused. One more thing. In case you're considering doing something dramatic, running, harming yourself, making a scene, understand that your father's safety depends on your cooperation. He's being watched. Any misstep from you, and the debt comes back into play. With interest. He walked away before she could respond. Elena made her way back to her room, locked the door, even though she knew it was meaningless. Changed into the silk nightgown someone had left folded on the bed. She lay in the darkness and listened to the sea. And finally, the numbness cracked. Elena curled onto her side and wept until she had nothing left. For her old life, for her father's betrayal, for the girl she'd been that morning in the bookstore, sketching in margins and believing the world was safe. That girl was gone. In her place was something new, something that would have to learn how to survive in a world of monsters, starting with the one who'd just bought her. Morning came too early and too bright. Sunlight poured through the massive windows, turning the bedroom into something that belonged in a magazine spread. Elena had barely slept. Every time she'd closed her eyes, she saw the auction room, heard the numbers climbing, felt Dominic Varela's gaze stripping away every pretense that she was still a person instead of property. She showered in the marble bathroom, using products that probably cost more than her monthly rent used to be. The hot water felt good, which made her angry. She didn't want anything here to feel good. Didn't want to find comfort in the cage, no matter how gilded. When she emerged, someone had been in her room. A breakfast tray sat on the small table by the window. Coffee, fruit, pastries that smelled like they'd been baked an hour ago. A note in elegant handwriting. Francesca will come for you at 10 o'clock. Dress casually. DV. Elena checked her phone. 7:30. She'd lost track that she even had it until now, had barely thought about it in the chaos of the last few days. She picked it up with shaking hands, unlocked it, and stared at the screen. No service. Of course. She tried anyway, pulled up her father's number, hit call. Nothing, not even a busy signal, just silence. The house is equipped with signal jammers. Elena spun around. Varela stood in her doorway dressed in dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. Casual for him probably meant $1,000 fabric. You can't just walk in here, Elena said, hating how her voice shook. It's my house. I can walk anywhere I please. He stepped inside and she fought the instinct to back away. But if it makes you feel better, I'll knock next time. It would make me feel better if you stayed out entirely. Not an option. He glanced at the phone in her hand. That's useless here, but I'm not cruel. If you want to contact your father, you can. Supervised, once a week, to let him know you're alive and well-treated. Well-treated, Elena repeated. You bought me. I paid your father's debts, saved both your lives. The fact that I expect something in return doesn't make me the villain you want me to be. Then what does it make you? Varela's expression didn't change. Pragmatic. Eat your breakfast. Francesca will be here soon. He left before she could throw something at him. Elena forced down the food because refusing felt like giving him power she couldn't afford to surrender. At exactly 10 o'clock, Francesca knocked. The older woman's face was professionally neutral, kind enough not to be cruel, distant enough not to be a friend. Good morning, Miss Rosie. I'm to show you the house and grounds. It's just Elena, she said quietly. Miss Rossi makes me feel like I'm someone important. Something flickered in Francesca's eyes. Sympathy, maybe. This way, Elena. The tour took 2 hours. The house was massive. 8 bedrooms, 10 bathrooms, a library that made Elena's chest ache, a kitchen that could service a restaurant, a gym, a pool that seemed to spill directly into the ocean. Every room was beautiful. Every room was a reminder of the wealth and power that had bought her. Mr. Varela works from the East Wing, Francesca explained as they walked past a hallway Elena hadn't seen the night before. You're not to go there without invitation. His business is his own. What business exactly? Francesca's expression closed. I don't ask questions I don't want answers to. I'd suggest you do the same. They ended the tour in the garden, terraced levels cut into the cliff, each one meticulously landscaped. Flowers Elena couldn't name, trees that probably cost more than cars, and beyond it all, the sea stretching to infinity. The property is fully secured, Francesca continued. Cameras, motion sensors, guards patrolling the perimeter. For your protection, of course. Of course, Elena echoed. Not to keep me trapped or anything. Francesca looked at her directly for the first time. I've worked for Mr. Varela for 8 years. I've seen many things, some of them difficult, but I've also seen that he values loyalty and obedience. If you can give him those things, your life here won't be unbearable. And if I can't? The older woman's silence was answer enough. That afternoon, Elena found herself alone for the first time since arriving. She wandered through the house like a ghost, running her fingers along expensive furniture, looking at art she didn't understand, searching for something that felt real. She ended up in the library, floor-to-ceiling shelves packed with books in multiple languages, a ladder on rails for reaching the higher shelves, reading chairs positioned near windows with impossible views. Elena pulled down a random book, Dante, in the original Italian. She'd read it in translation for a class last semester, a lifetime ago. You read Italian? She didn't jump this time. Varela's voice was becoming depressingly familiar. I'm studying literature, Elena said without turning around. It's required. Studied, he corrected. Past tense. She turned to face him. What? You're not going back to university. I thought that was obvious. The book slipped from her hands. She caught it before it hit the floor. You can't just... I'm in the middle of my degree. I have exams in 3 weeks. I have... Had, Varela interrupted. You had exams. You had a degree program. Now you have this. He gestured at the library, the house, the life he'd constructed around her. I think the trade-off is fair. Fair? Elena's voice rose. You think ripping me away from everything I've worked for is fair? I think it's necessary. He moved closer, and Elena held her ground through sheer stubbornness. The woman I marry can't be some university student with friends and professors who'll ask questions. She needs to be mine, completely. No divided loyalties, no outside attachments. I'm not a thing you can just erase and rebuild. No, he agreed. You're a problem I'm solving. There's a difference. Elena wanted to hit him, wanted to scream. Instead, she asked, what if I refuse to marry you? Then your father dies, badly, and you'll spend the rest of your life wishing you'd made the other choice. He said it casually, like he was discussing the weather. I don't make threats I won't follow through on, Elena. The sooner you accept that, the easier this becomes. He left her standing there among the books, shaking with rage and helplessness. Days blurred together. Elena developed a routine because the alternative was going insane. She woke early, before Varela usually appeared, ate breakfast in her room, spent mornings in the library, reading anything she could find to keep her mind occupied. Afternoons in the garden, as far from the house as the property allowed. Evenings were the worst, formal dinners where Varela watched her like she was a puzzle he was solving, conversations that felt like interrogations disguised as small talk. Tell me about your mother, he said one night, a week into her captivity. Elena looked up from the food she'd been pushing around her plate. Why? Because I asked. She died when I was 7. Cancer. That's all you need to know. And your father raised you alone? He did his best. The words came out bitter. Or I thought he did. Turns out his best included selling me to cover his gambling debts. Varela's expression didn't change. He made choices. Poor ones. But he kept you fed, educated, safe for 15 years. That counts for something. Does it? Because from where I'm sitting, it counts for nothing. Anger is easier than grief, Varela observed. I understand the appeal, But at some point, you'll have to decide whether you want to spend the rest of your life furious at a man who can't fix what he's broken. Elena set down her fork. Don't pretend you understand anything about me. I understand more than you think. He leaned back in his chair. I understand what it's like to have your life decided by someone else's mistakes, to inherit debts you didn't create, to survive by becoming something you never wanted to be. Is that supposed to make us allies, partners in tragedy? It's supposed to make you realize I'm not doing this to be cruel. I'm doing it because in my world, survival requires control, and control requires insurance. You're my insurance. Against what? Against the people who'd use someone I care about to destroy me. He said it matter-of-factly. If I never care about anyone, they can't leverage that weakness. But a wife, a visible, public wife, gives the appearance of normalcy, of humanity. It makes my enemies underestimate me. And you, having no choice in the matter, can't betray me the way someone with options might. So I'm camouflage. Your strategy. He stood. Finish your dinner. Tomorrow we're going into Monaco. You need a new wardrobe. The clothes I provided are adequate, but we have events coming up. You'll need to look the part. What part? The woman I chose. He paused at the door. Wear something nice tomorrow. We leave at 10. The next morning, Elena found herself in the back of Varella's car again, descending from the fortress into the glittering trap of Monaco. The driver, a silent man named Marco, navigated through streets Elena didn't recognize toward boutiques that didn't display prices, because if you had to ask, you couldn't afford them. Varela walked beside her into the first shop like he owned it. Maybe he did. The staff certainly treated him that way. Immediate attention, private room, champagne. Elena didn't drink while assistants brought dress after dress for his approval. Try this one. Elena took the garment, deep blue, probably silk, definitely expensive. I'm not your doll. No, you're my fiancé. There's a difference. He settled into a chair with his phone. And my fiancé needs to look like she belongs at my side. Now try it on, or I'll have them do it for you. She tried it on, and the next one. And the 10 after that. Each time, Varela barely looked up before deciding yes or no with a single word. By the third boutique, Elena felt like she'd lost pieces of herself with every dress, like she was being rebuilt into someone else's vision. At the fourth stop, a jewelry store with security that looked military, Varela finally put away his phone and paid attention. We need rings, he told the jeweler. Engagement and wedding, classic, nothing too flashy. The man brought out trays of diamonds that caught the light like captured stars. Elena stared at them, feeling sick. Give me your hand, Varela said. No. He looked at her with something that might have been patience if it wasn't so cold. Elena, your hand. She extended it because fighting was exhausting and she was so tired. Varela took her hand in his skin warm, his grip firm but not painful, and slid ring after ring onto her finger, checking the fit, the look, the way the metal sat against her skin. This one, he decided finally, a platinum band with a single diamond. Beautiful, tasteful, absolutely wrong. I don't want it, Elena whispered. I don't care. He turned to the jeweler. We'll take this for engagement, for the wedding band, something that complements it. Simple, no stones. Excellent choice, Mr. Varela. Elena pulled her hand back the moment Varela released it. This is insane. You're planning a wedding for two people who don't even like each other. Like has nothing to do with it. He signed something the jeweler presented, probably a receipt with numbers Elena couldn't fathom. We'll pick these up next week, have them sized properly. Outside, the sunlight felt obscene, too bright, or too cheerful for the moment. Elena's future crystallized into something irreversible. Lunch, Varela said, guiding her toward a restaurant that overlooked the harbor. More security, more staff treating him like royalty, more evidence that his world operated on rules Elena didn't understand. They sat at a table that probably required reservations months in advance. Varela ordered for both of them without asking what she wanted. You're angry, he observed. Brilliant deduction. It's wasted energy. Anger won't change anything. Elena leaned forward. Then what will? Because you keep telling me to accept this, to play along, to be grateful I'm alive. But you haven't given me a single reason to do anything except hate you. For the first time since she'd met him, something shifted in Varella's expression. Not quite vulnerability, not quite regret, but something close. "You want honesty?" he asked quietly. "I want anything real." He was silent for a moment, studying her like he was deciding how much truth she could handle. Then he said, "I was 17 when my father sold me to pay his debts. Not to a man, to an organization. People who turned boys into soldiers and soldiers into monsters. I spent 8 years learning how to survive in a world where mercy was weakness and trust was suicide. By the time I bought my way out, I'd become exactly what they'd made me. And now I run an empire built on the same principles that nearly destroyed me." Elena's breath caught. "You were owned. Yes, not in the same way you are. They didn't parade me on a stage or put me in pretty dresses. They put guns in my hands and targets in front of me and told me to prove I was worth keeping alive. So before you tell me I don't understand, consider that I understand better than you want me to." The food arrived. Neither of them touched it. "Then why?" Elena asked. "Why do this to someone else if you know what it feels like?" "Because I learned the most important lesson that world teaches. Power is the only thing that keeps you from being powerless. And you, Elena, are proof of my power. The fact that I can take someone's daughter, buy her like merchandise, and remake her into whatever I need her to be, that sends a message to everyone who might consider me a target. I'm a message. You're many things." He picked up his wine. "And you're learning what I learned, that survival sometimes means accepting the unacceptable." Elena's hands shook in her lap. "I won't become like you." "No," Varela agreed. "You'll become something else entirely. Something I haven't decided yet." They finished lunch in silence. The drive back to the fortress felt longer than it had that morning. Elena stared out the window and tried to find the version of herself that had existed before the auction, before Monaco, before she'd learned that people could be bought and sold like art or cars or stocks. She couldn't find her. That night, Elena stood at her bedroom window and watched the sea. The moon was full, turning the water silver. Beautiful. Indifferent to the violence happening on the cliffs above it. A knock at her door. "Come in," she said, assuming Francesca. Varela entered instead, carrying 2 glasses and a bottle of something amber. "I don't want company," Elena said. "Neither do I. But here we are." He poured 2 drinks, handed her one. "Whiskey. 18 years old. Older than you were when your life ended." "Poetic?" "Factual." He moved to stand beside her at the window. "In 2 months we marry. In 6 months you'll appear at your first public event as my wife. In a year, if you've proven yourself trustworthy, some of the restrictions will ease. And if I haven't proven myself, then they'll tighten until you do." He sipped his drink. "I'm not a patient man, Elena, but I'm not unnecessarily cruel either. Give me what I need, and I'll give you a life. Not the one you wanted, but one you can survive." Elena looked at him, really looked, for the first time. Tried to see past the expensive clothes and controlled violence to whatever was underneath. "What do you need?" "Loyalty. Obedience. The appearance that you chose this. I'll never be able to fake that convincingly. You'd be surprised what people believe when they want to." He finished his whiskey. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow we start preparing you for the life you're about to lead." He left the glass on her table and disappeared into the hallway. Elena stood at the window until the moon set and the sky started to lighten. Then she did something she hadn't allowed herself to do since arriving. She opened the closet, pulled out the simplest dress she could find, and changed. If she was going to survive this, she needed to stop being the girl who'd been auctioned. That girl was gone. In her place was someone new, someone who'd learn Varella's rules and find the cracks in them, someone who'd play the part he wanted while keeping some small piece of herself locked away where he couldn't reach. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was something, and something was better than the nothing she'd been living with. The next 6 weeks passed in a kind of suspended reality. Varela was true to his word. Elena's preparation began immediately. Etiquette lessons with a woman who'd probably taught royalty. Language tutoring because apparently Elena's university Italian wasn't good enough. Dance lessons because Varela's world required her to waltz like she'd been born to it. Self-defense training that surprised her until the instructor explained that Varela's wife needed to be able to protect herself if his enemies ever got close. "You think someone would hurt me to get to him?" Elena asked after a particularly brutal session that left her bruised and gasping. The instructor, a compact woman named Sarah, who moved like a weapon, just looked at her. In his world, they'd do worse than hurt you. They'd make you wish they had. Elena threw up in the bathroom afterward, then showed up for the next lesson. Varela watched her progress with the same clinical interest he applied to everything. Sometimes he sat in on her lessons, offering corrections or praise in equal measure. He never touched her, never pushed for anything beyond the role they were both performing. But his presence was constant, at meals, in passing, in the way he seemed to know everything she did, even when he wasn't there. "You're getting better," he said one evening as they sat through another formal dinner. 3 weeks until the wedding now. "The dancing, especially. Your instructor says you're a natural." "I'm a literature student who learned to fake it," Elena corrected. "There's a difference. In my world, faking it well enough is the same as being real." He cut into his steak. "Which reminds me, we need to discuss the wedding night." Elena's fork clattered against her plate. "Excuse me? People will expect certain things. Evidence that the marriage is legitimate, real. I need you to understand what that means." Her throat closed. "I understand perfectly." "Do you?" Varela set down his knife. "Because I'm not interested in forcing you into my bed, Elena. Despite what you think of me, I'm not that kind of monster. But we do need to share a room, share a bed occasionally, maintain the illusion. Just the illusion. Yes, until or unless you decide otherwise." Elena stared at him. "You're saying you'd wait? For me to want it? I'm saying I have no interest in a wife who's there because she has no choice. When I take you to bed, it will be because you've decided you want to be there. Until then, we maintain appearances." He resumed eating. "Is that acceptable?" It was the first choice he'd offered her, the first crack in the absolute control he wielded. "Yes," Elena managed. "Good. Then we won't discuss it again unless you bring it up." That night, Elena lay in bed and tried to process what had just happened. Varela had given her space, autonomy over her own body. It was such a small thing, such a basic human right, and yet it felt like a gift. She hated that it felt like a gift. 2 days before the wedding, Elena's father called. Francesca brought her a phone, landline supervised, exactly as Varela had promised. 5 minutes, the older woman said gently. Elena took the phone with shaking hand. "Papa?" "Elena, thank God. Are you all right? Has he hurt you?" The concern in his voice made her want to scream. "I'm fine. Physically. I'm so sorry. I've been trying to find a way to fix this, to get you back, but they're watching me constantly, and there's nothing to fix." Elena's voice came out flat. "I'm marrying him in 2 days. It's done." Silence. Then, "Marrying? Did you think he bought me for a different reason?" She shouldn't say this, shouldn't twist the knife, but she couldn't stop. "I'm becoming Mrs. Dominic Varela. You sold me, and now I'm making the best of it." "Elena, please, I never meant—" "I know what you meant. You meant to save yourself, and you did. Congratulations." She closed her eyes. "I have to go." "Wait, are you safe there?" The question broke something in her chest, because yes, strangely, she was safe. Fed, clothed, protected by a man who terrified her but hadn't harmed her. It would be easier if Varela were a simple monster, easier to hate him without complications. "I'm as safe as I can be," she said finally. "Don't call again, Papa. It's easier if I don't hear your voice." She hung up before he could respond. Francesca took the phone. "You all right?" "No, but I will be." The wedding was small, intimate, exactly as Varela had promised. Just 20 people in a chapel that probably cost more than most people's houses. Elena wore white because tradition demanded it, even though the irony tasted like poison. The dress was beautiful, lace and silk and everything a bride should want, and she felt like a corpse being dressed for viewing. Varela stood at the altar in a black suit that probably cost more than her education. He watched her walk down the aisle with an expression she couldn't read. Not love, not even affection, just assessment. The priest spoke words Elena didn't hear. She said, "I do," when prompted, because what else could she say? Varela slid the platinum band onto her finger, the one they'd chosen in Monaco a lifetime ago, and she did the same for him, her hand steady through sheer force of will. You may kiss the bride. Varela leaned in. His lips brushed hers, brief, chaste, utterly void of passion, a formality, a box checked, applause from the 20 witnesses who'd probably been paid to attend. And just like that, Elena Rossi ceased to exist. In her place was Elena Varela, wife to a man she didn't know and couldn't escape. The reception was worse. Champagne and music and people congratulating Varela on his beautiful bride. Elena smiled until her face hurt, danced when required, let Varela's hand rest on her waist while they moved across the floor like they'd done this 1,000 times. You're doing well, he murmured as they swayed to something classical. I'm performing well, she corrected. There's a difference. Not to anyone watching. The party ended near midnight. Guests left in expensive cars. Varela led Elena back to the fortress that was now legally her home. Into the bedroom that was now legally theirs. Elena stood in the center of the room while Varela closed the door. The closet on the left is yours, he said, already removing his jacket. The bathroom is shared, but I'm rarely here before 7 a.m. You won't be disturbed. That's it? That's all you're going to say? He paused. What did you expect? I don't know. Something, anything. We just got married and you're acting like it's a business merger. It is a business merger. He loosened his tie. You're my wife on paper. That's what matters. The rest, he gestured vaguely. The rest is whatever we make it. Elena wanted to throw something, wanted to scream that this wasn't normal, wasn't okay, wasn't anything a marriage should be. Instead, she heard herself ask, Do you even want me here? Or am I just convenient? Varela looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, You're useful, you're strategic, and you're far less annoying than I expected. If that counts as wanting you here, then yes. It shouldn't have felt like anything. Shouldn't have mattered. But somewhere in Elena's chest, something small and stupid warmed at the backhanded compliment. I'm going to change, she said. Take your time. When she emerged from the bathroom in the silk nightgown that had been laid out, probably by Francesca, Varela was already in bed, reading something on his tablet. He looked up briefly. I sleep on the right. You get the left. I don't snore and I don't move much. Try not to kick me in your sleep. Elena climbed into bed, staying as far to her side as physically possible. The mattress was enormous. She could barely feel Varela's presence, but she could hear his breathing, could smell whatever expensive cologne he wore, could sense him there in the darkness. Elena. What? Welcome to the family. She didn't respond, didn't know how. Eventually, exhaustion won. Elena fell asleep in a stranger's bed, wearing a stranger's ring, living a stranger's life. And in the morning, when she woke to find Varela already gone and coffee waiting on her nightstand, she realized this was her life now. All she had to do was figure out how to survive it. The coffee was still hot when Elena woke, which meant Varela hadn't been gone long. She sat up slowly, her body stiff from sleeping in an unfamiliar bed next to a man who was now legally her husband. The ring on her finger caught the morning light, throwing fractured rainbows across the white sheets. She twisted it absently, testing its weight. It felt heavier than it should. 3 weeks passed in a strange rhythm. Varela left early most mornings, disappearing into the east wing where Elena still wasn't permitted. He returned for dinner, always at 8, always punctual, and they'd sit across from each other making conversation that felt like a performance neither of them enjoyed. Then bed, where they occupied opposite sides of a mattress that might as well have been a continent. He kept his word, never touched her beyond what appearances required, never pushed for more than she was willing to give. It should have made things easier. Instead, it made everything more confusing. You're going out tonight, Varela announced one evening over dinner. 4 weeks into the marriage now. We have an event, charity gala, very public, very visible. Elena set down her fork. And I'm the accessory you're bringing. You're my wife. People expect to see you. He glanced at her, his expression unreadable. Francesca already has a dress ready. Hair and makeup start at 6. What kind of event? The kind where people with too much money pretend to care about people with none. There'll be photographers, politicians, business associates. You smile. You stay close to me. You don't discuss my work or answer questions about our relationship beyond the approved story. What's the approved story? We met through mutual friends. It was love at first sight. We're very happy. His tone was dry. Simple, believable, boring enough that people stop asking questions. Elena pushed food around her plate. And if someone asks something I'm not prepared for, then you defer to me. Look adoring and let me handle it. He studied her for a moment. You're nervous. Of course I'm nervous. I've never had to lie to an entire room of strangers about being happily married to someone who bought me. Then don't think of it as lying. Think of it as acting. You've been doing it for weeks now. This is just a larger stage. The gala was held at a hotel that probably had a waiting list measured in years. Elena wore emerald silk that clung in ways that made her self-conscious. Her hair swept up to expose her neck, diamonds at her throat that Varela had presented to her an hour before they left. In the car, he'd given her one final instruction. Stay within arm's reach. Don't wander. If anyone makes you uncomfortable, tell me immediately. Why would anyone make me uncomfortable? I thought these were your people. Oh, these are people who smile while planning your destruction. There's a difference. He'd taken her hand then, a rare gesture, and she'd felt the tension in his grip. Just stay close. The ballroom was overwhelming. Hundreds of people in formal wear, champagne flowing like water, music from a live orchestra that probably cost more than most people's yearly salary. Elena felt every eye turn toward them as they entered, felt the weight of assessment, curiosity, judgment. Varela's hand settled at the small of her back. Breathe, he murmured, and smile. She smiled. Let him guide her through the crowd, introducing her to people whose names she forgot immediately. Everyone was pleasant, everyone was curious, and everyone, Elena noticed, was slightly afraid of her husband. Mrs. Varela, how lovely to finally meet you. A woman in her 50s, dripping with jewelry. Dominic has kept you quite hidden away. We've been enjoying our privacy, Elena replied, the lies smooth after weeks of practice. Of course. Newlyweds. The woman's smile didn't reach her eyes, though one does wonder how you two met. Dominic is usually so particular about his associations. Varela's hand tightened slightly at Elena's back. Warning. Through friends, Elena said. The boring kind of story, I'm afraid. Nothing dramatic. How disappointing. I was hoping for something more romantic. Reality rarely lives up to expectations, Varela cut in smoothly. If you'll excuse us, I see someone I need to speak with. He steered Elena away before the woman could respond. You handled that well, he said quietly. She was testing me. They're all testing you, trying to figure out if you're a weakness they can exploit. His expression was hard. Don't give them anything to work with. The evening dragged. Elena smiled until her face ached, made small talk about nothing, danced with Varela when required, his hand firm at her waist, his movements precise and controlled. To anyone watching, they probably looked like exactly what they were pretending to be, a wealthy couple, comfortably in love, belonging to this world of excess and power. Then everything changed. Elena had excused herself to the restroom, needing 5 minutes away from the performance. She'd just finished washing her hands when two men entered, not the restroom, but the hallway outside. Their voices carried through the door. Ridiculous that he brought her here, like we don't all know what she is. Varela's got balls, I'll give him that, parading his purchased wife around like she's legitimate. Elena froze. She's pretty enough, but does he really think marrying her makes it legal? The girl's what, 22, 23? Probably doesn't even know what business he's really in. Better that way. Ignorant wives are compliant wives. Until they're not. My bet is 6 months before she tries to run. Then we'll see how merciful Dominic really is. The voices faded. Elena stood in the bathroom, her hands gripping the marble counter, her reflection showing someone who looked calm while everything inside her screamed. Purchased wife. They all knew. Of course they all knew. This whole evening, every smile, every conversation, every pretense of normalcy, it was all a joke everyone was in on except her. When she emerged, Varela was waiting in the hallway. He took one look at her face and his expression darkened. What happened? Nothing. I'm fine. You're a terrible liar when you're upset. What happened? Elena shook her head. Can we leave? Please. I can't. I need to get out of here. He studied her for 3 seconds. Then, wait here. Varela disappeared back into the ballroom. 5 minutes later, he returned with her wrap and his expression set in stone. Let's go. In the car, Elena stared out the window while Monaco's lights blurred past. Varela didn't ask questions, didn't push, just let her sit in silence until they were back at the fortress and she was safe in the bedroom they shared. She was changing out of the dress when he spoke from the doorway. Tell me what happened. Why? You already know. Elena turned to face him, still in her slip, too angry to care about modesty. They all know, don't they? Every single person in that room knows exactly what I am, what you did, and they're all just fine with it, like it's normal, like buying people is just another Tuesday in your world. Varela's jaw tightened. What did you hear? Does it matter? Yes, it matters. Elena repeated the conversation word for word, watched his expression turn colder with each sentence. Names, he said when she finished. Did you recognize the voices? No, I didn't see them. But Dominic, she stopped. She'd never used his first name before. It felt strange on her tongue. They're right, aren't they? About all of it. I'm just your purchased wife playing dress-up. You're my wife, legal, binding. What they think about how we got here is irrelevant. It's not irrelevant to me, Elena's voice cracked. I stood there all night pretending to be something I'm not, and the whole time they were laughing at me. At us. At this joke of a marriage. Varela crossed the room in 3 strides, grabbed her shoulders, not roughly, but firmly enough to make her look at him. Listen to me. Those people, they're parasites, feeding on gossip because they have nothing else of value. What they think, what they say, what they whisper behind closed doors, none of it changes the fact that you are under my protection, my name, my power. And anyone who tries to use you against me will learn exactly why that's a mistake. I don't want to be protected. I want to be... She couldn't finish, didn't know what she wanted anymore. What? Free? His grip loosened but didn't release. You can't have that. Not in this life. But you can have safety, respect, a place where no one touches you without consequences. His eyes searched hers. I know it's not enough. I know it's not what you deserve, but it's what I can give you. Elena's anger drained away, leaving only exhaustion. Why are you being kind right now? You don't usually... Because you're upset and it's my fault. He released her, stepping back. And because those men were right about one thing, you don't know what business I'm in, and that ignorance keeps you safer than knowledge ever could. That night, Elena lay awake long after Varela's breathing had evened into sleep. She studied his profile in the darkness, the sharp angles of his face, the tension he carried even unconscious. He'd said he understood what it was like to be owned. She believed him, but understanding didn't make him innocent, didn't make what he'd done to her forgivable. Still, he could have forced her, could have hurt her, could have broken her into something compliant and empty. Instead, he'd given her space, choices, however small, and tonight, when she'd been humiliated, he'd gotten her out, protected her dignity even if he couldn't protect her from the truth. It was confusing, hating someone who kept showing glimpses of humanity. The next morning, Varela was gone before she woke, but he'd left a note on his pillow. Take the day for yourself. Library, garden, wherever. You've earned it. D. Elena spent the morning in the library, losing herself in books that had nothing to do with her life. Around noon, Francesca appeared with lunch and an unexpected message. Mr. Varela asked me to give you these. She held out a set of keys. For the East Wing, his office. He said you're permitted now if you want. Elena stared at the keys. He's letting me into his workspace? Apparently. Francesca's expression was carefully neutral. I don't ask questions, dear. I just deliver messages. After the older woman left, Elena sat with the keys in her palm. This was a test. Had to be. Varela was seeing if she'd invade his privacy, snoop through his business, prove she couldn't be trusted. Or maybe he was just tired of walls. She waited until after dinner, which Varela missed, sending word he was detained, before using the keys. The east wing was different from the rest of the house. Darker, more utilitarian. Less showroom, more fortress. His office was at the end of the hall. Elena unlocked it, half expecting alarms. None came. Inside, the room was surprisingly spare. A massive desk with multiple monitors, bookshelves lined with texts in languages Elena didn't recognize, maps on the walls, and along one wall, photographs. Not art, not decoration. Memories. Elena moved closer. Most were old, Varela as a teenager, thin and hard-eyed even then. A few showed him with other men, all of them looking like they'd seen too much too young. But one photo made her breath catch. A boy, maybe 6 or 7, smiling at the camera with gap-toothed joy. The same dark eyes as Varela, but softer, happier. Before whatever had happened to turn him into the man who'd bought her. That was a long time ago. Elena spun. Varela stood in the doorway, still in his suit from whatever meeting he'd attended. He didn't look angry that she was there, just tired. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. I gave you the keys, I knew you'd use them eventually." He moved past her to the desk, loosening his tie. "Curiosity is natural." "Who were you?" Elena gestured at the photo of the boy. "Before, whatever made you into this?" Varela looked at the image for a long moment. Someone who believed people were good, that the world made sense, that if you worked hard and followed rules, you'd be safe. He turned away from it. Naive. Stupid. Weak. Not weak, just young. Same thing, in my world. He poured himself a drink from the bar built into the bookshelf. "You want to know what business I'm in? What I do that keeps this house running and those people at the gala terrified?" Elena's pulse quickened. "Do I?" "Probably not. But I'm tired of lying to you through omission." He took a long drink. "I move things. Money, mostly. From people who have it legally to accounts where it becomes untraceable. I facilitate transactions that can't happen in daylight. I make problems disappear for people who pay well enough. And occasionally, when someone forgets that I'm not someone to cross, I remind them. Permanently." The room felt smaller. "You kill people." "I have killed people. There's a difference." He met her eyes. "Does that terrify you, knowing what I'm capable of?" Elena considered lying, decided against it. "Yes, but it also explains things. Why people are afraid of you. Why you need a wife no one can use against you. Why you think the only way to survive is through control." "And now that you know?" "Now I know." She moved toward the door. "Thank you for being honest, even if I wish you hadn't been." "Elena." She stopped. "I'm not asking you to forgive what I am, or what I've done, but I need you to understand something." He set down his glass. "The people I hurt? They're not innocent. They're not victims. They're predators who got outmaneuvered. There's no heroism in what I do, but there's also no mindless cruelty, just business. That's supposed to make me feel better? It's supposed to help you sleep at night, knowing that the man in your bed isn't a monster, just someone who does monstrous things for reasons that make sense to him." Elena left the office without responding, but that night, when she lay down in their bed, she didn't move quite as far to her side. And when Varela joined her an hour later, neither of them mentioned it. Over the next 2 weeks, something shifted. Small changes, barely noticeable. Varela started eating breakfast with her instead of leaving before she woke, asked about what she was reading, showed her parts of the property she hadn't seen, a shooting range where he practiced, a greenhouse where Francesca grew herbs, a workshop where Marco built furniture in his spare time. "I didn't realize you had hobbies," Elena said, watching Varela clean a handgun with practiced efficiency. "I have skills. Not quite the same thing." He held the weapon up to the light, checking for imperfections. "You should learn. How to shoot, I mean, just in case." "In case of what?" "In case I'm not there and you need to protect yourself." The thought made her stomach turn. "You really think someone would come after me?" "I think my enemies would do anything to hurt me. And you're the most visible way to do that now." He loaded the gun, checked the safety. "I won't always be able to protect you, Elena. You need to be able to protect yourself. So she learned. Sarah taught her hand-to-hand combat twice a week. Varela himself taught her to shoot, his hand steady on hers as he adjusted her grip, his voice patient when she flinched at the recoil. Again, he'd say, stance wider, breathe, squeeze, don't pull. By the fourth lesson, she hit the target center mass 3 times in a row. Good, Varela said, and Elena hated how much his approval warmed her. 2 months into the marriage, Elena woke to find Varela still in bed. A rarity. He was awake, staring at the ceiling, tension radiating off him in waves. What's wrong? She asked. Nothing you need to worry about. That's not an answer. He turned his head to look at her. There's a problem, business-related. Someone decided to test whether I'm as dangerous as my reputation suggests. And? They'll regret it. He sat up, running a hand through his hair. I need to leave for a few days, maybe a week. Francesca and Marco will be here. Security stays the same. You'll be safe. Where are you going? It's better if you don't know. He stood, already mentally somewhere else. There's money in the safe in my office. The combination is your birthday. If something happens, don't. Elena cut him off. Don't say that. You'll come back. He looked at her strangely. You care if I do. The question caught her off guard. Did she? 3 months ago, she would have celebrated his death, would have seen it as freedom, but now, yes, she admitted quietly. I care. Something unreadable crossed his face. Then he nodded. I'll call when I can. He left that afternoon. The fortress felt emptier without him, which was absurd. Elena had spent most of her life not knowing Dominic Varela existed. His absence shouldn't matter, but it did. 3 days passed, then 4. No calls, no messages. Francesca maintained that everything was fine, but Elena saw the worry in the older woman's eyes. On the 5th day, Elena was in the library when she heard voices in the hallway. Not Francesca, not Marco. Strangers. She moved to the door, peering out carefully. 3 men in suits stood near the entrance to the east wing. One of them was arguing with Marco in rapid Italian. Doesn't matter if he's not here. We have business with his wife. Elena's blood went cold. Marco blocked their path. You need to leave, now. Or what? You'll shoot us? We both know you're not authorized to kill without Varela's direct order, and he's not here, is he? They knew Varela was gone, knew the security protocols. This wasn't random. Elena backed away from the door, her mind racing. The panic room. Varela had shown it to her the week before, hidden behind a bookshelf in their bedroom, accessible only by fingerprint. She could lock herself inside and call for help. She was halfway up the stairs when someone grabbed her arm. Going somewhere, Mrs. Varela? The man was young, mid-20s, with a smile that made her skin crawl. Behind him, she could hear sounds of a struggle. Marco shouting, something breaking. Let me go, Elena said, proud that her voice stayed steady. Can't do that. See, your husband owes some people, and you're the collateral. Training kicked in before thought did. Elena stomped down hard on his instep while driving her elbow into his solar plexus exactly like Sarah had taught her. The man's grip loosened. She ran, made it to the bedroom, slammed the door, locked it, knowing it wouldn't hold long, ran to the bookshelf, pressed her thumb to the scanner. The shelf swung open just as the bedroom door splintered behind her. Elena threw herself into the panic room. The door sealed with a hiss of hydraulics. Safe. She was safe. She fumbled for the phone on the wall, dialed the emergency number Varela had programmed. It rang once, twice. Elena? Varela's voice tense with something she'd never heard from him before. Fear. They're here. 3 men. They took Marco and they tried to Are you in the safe room? Yes. But Dominic, Marco, is alive. I can hear him on the security feed. Stay where you are. Don't open that door for anyone. I'm 10 minutes away. 10 minutes? You're here? I was already coming back. I felt... He stopped. Just stay safe. I'm coming. The line went dead. Elena sank to the floor of the panic room, her whole body shaking with adrenaline. She could hear voices outside, muffled by the reinforced walls. Threats, promises of what they'd do when they got the door open. Then gunfire. Elena covered her ears, pressing herself into the corner. More shots, shouting, a scream that cut off abruptly. Then silence. A knock on the door. Elena, it's me. You can come out. Varella's voice. But Elena had been trained well enough to be paranoid. Prove it, she called out. You asked me last week why I keep Dante in Italian instead of translation. I said because some things lose meaning when you make them easier to understand. You said that was pretentious. I said you were probably right. It was him. Elena opened the door. Varela stood there, blood spattered across his shirt, a gun still in his hand. Behind him, 2 bodies. The third man, the young one who'd grabbed her, was on his knees, Marco holding a gun to his head. Are you hurt? Varela asked, his eyes scanning her for injuries. No, I'm fine. You came back. Of course I came back. He handed his gun to Marco, pulled Elena into his arms, and for the first time since the auction, she let herself lean into him. Let herself take comfort in the strength of someone who'd just killed for her. I was so scared, she whispered into his chest. I know. His hand came up to her hair, stroking gently. But you did everything right. The training worked. You survived. What about him? Elena gestured to the kneeling man without looking at him. He's going to tell me who sent them, and then he's going to disappear. Varella's voice was cold, absolute. Take her upstairs, Francesca. Make sure she has everything she needs. The older woman appeared from somewhere, her face pale but composed. She guided Elena away, but not before Elena heard the young man start to beg. In their bedroom, Francesca drew a bath and brought tea Elena couldn't drink. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. First time? Francesca asked gently. First time what? Seeing what Mr. Varela really does. Who he really is. Elena nodded, not trusting her voice. He's killed many people, dear. But tonight, he killed for you. There's a difference. The older woman squeezed her shoulder. Get some rest. He'll be up when he's finished. It was past midnight when Varela finally came to bed. He'd showered somewhere else. The blood was gone, replaced by clean clothes and that careful control he always wore. But his hands shook slightly as he poured himself a drink. Is he dead? Elena asked from where she sat curled on the bed. Yes. The other 2? Also yes. And Marco? Bruised, angry, alive. Varela drank. They knew I was gone. Knew the schedule. Someone on the inside fed them information. Do you know who? I have suspicions. They'll be dealt with. He looked at her finally. You should have been terrified, should have frozen. Instead, you fought and ran and locked yourself in the safe room exactly like I taught you. Why? Elena thought about it. Because I wanted to live, because... She stopped. Because what? Because you told me you'd come back, and I believed you. Varela set down his glass, crossed to the bed, sat on the edge, close enough to touch, but not touching. I was in Barcelona when the security alert came through, he said quietly. I saw them breach the perimeter on my phone, saw them corner Marco, saw one of them go after you, and for the first time in 15 years, I felt fear. Real, visceral fear. Not for myself. For you. Elena's breath caught. Dominic! I broke every traffic law getting here, killed 3 men without hesitation. Would have killed 30 if that's what it took. His eyes met hers, and in them, Elena saw something she'd never expected to see. Vulnerability. When did you become something I'd kill for instead of something I just owned? I don't know, she whispered. When did I start hoping you'd come back instead of hoping you wouldn't? He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his hand cupped her face with a gentleness that made her chest ache. I can't give you freedom, he said. Can't undo what was done. But I can give you this, my protection, my loyalty, my... He stopped, seeming to struggle with words. Whatever this is becoming. Elena leaned into his touch. What if I told you I'm starting to want to stay? Not because I have to, but because part of me, a part I don't understand, actually wants to be here. Then I'd say we're both more damaged than I thought. His thumb traced her cheekbone. And I'd be grateful for it. The kiss happened without decision. One moment they were talking, and the next his lips were on hers. Not the chaste press from the wedding, but something real, hungry, full of everything they'd been holding back for months. Elena kissed him back, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. This was insane. Wrong. Stockholm Syndrome or trauma bonding or whatever psychological term explained how a woman could want the man who'd bought her. But she did want him, had been wanting him for weeks without admitting it. And tonight, after almost losing him, after almost losing herself, she was done pretending otherwise. Varela pulled back, his breathing unsteady. Elena, we don't have to. If you're not, I know, you've made that clear. She held his gaze. I'm choosing this. Choosing you. Is that enough? More than enough. He kissed her again, slower this time, reverent. But if you change your mind at any point, I'll tell you, I promise. She pulled him down to the bed. Now stop talking and help me forget tonight ever happened. So he did. And for the first time since the auction, Elena let herself feel something other than fear or anger or numb resignation. She let herself feel wanted, chosen, real. It didn't fix anything, didn't make the past disappear or their future certain, but it was something, and for now, something was enough. Morning light filled the bedroom with a softness that felt almost obscene given what had happened the night before. Elena woke to find Varela already awake, propped on one elbow, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Not the controlled mask he usually wore. Something rawer. You're staring, she said, her voice rough with sleep. I'm trying to figure out if you regret last night. Elena considered the question honestly. Her body ached in ways that reminded her of every moment, every touch. The logical part of her brain screamed that this was wrong, that sleeping with the man who'd bought her was some kind of surrender. But the rest of her, the part that had stopped pretending months ago, felt something else entirely. No, she said finally. I don't regret it. Do you? I regret that it took 3 men trying to kidnap you for me to be honest about what I wanted. His hand moved to her face, thumb tracing her jaw. I regret waiting this long. You were keeping your word, waiting for me to choose. And now that you have? Elena leaned into his touch. Now we figure out what this becomes. They spent the morning in bed, not making love again, though the tension was there, electric and waiting. Instead, they talked, really talked. Varela told her about the years after his father sold him, the things he'd done to survive, the first man he'd killed when he was 19 and terrified and convinced he'd go to hell for it. I waited to feel guilty, he said, staring at the ceiling. Kept waiting for remorse or shame or something human, but all I felt was relief, that I was alive and he wasn't. That's when I knew I'd become what they'd made me. You're not a monster, Elena said quietly. I've done monstrous things. That's not the same. She rolled onto her side to face him. Monsters don't give people choices, don't keep promises, don't look terrified when someone they care about is in danger. I killed 3 men last night and interrogated a 4th until he told me everything I needed to know. Then I put a bullet in his head. His eyes met hers. How is that not monstrous? Because they came here to hurt me, to use me against you. You were protecting what's yours. Elena paused. I should be horrified. Part of me is, but mostly I'm just grateful you came back in time. Varela pulled her closer, his arms solid and warm around her. I'll always come back, no matter where I am or what I'm doing. You call, I come. That's the deal now. What deal? The one where you're not just my wife on paper anymore, where this, he gestured between them, is real, messy and complicated and probably unhealthy, but real. Elena pressed her face into his chest. I never thought I'd want this. Want you. I spent months hating you. You had good reason. I still have good reason. You bought me, Dominic, paid 15 million euros for ownership of another human being. That doesn't just disappear because we've developed feelings. No, he agreed. It doesn't, but it can coexist with something else. Something better. His hand stroked her hair. I can't undo what was done. Can't give you back the life you lost, but I can give you a different one. One where you choose to stay instead of being forced to. And if I chose to leave, The question hung between them like a blade. Then I'd let you go, Varela said finally, and Elena heard the truth in his voice, even as it clearly cost him. I'd hate it. Would probably drink myself unconscious and do something stupid. But I wouldn't stop you. Not anymore. Elena tilted her head up to look at him. You mean that? I mean it, though I'm hoping you won't test me on it. I won't. She kissed him softly. I'm choosing to stay. For now. We'll see what forever looks like when we get there. Over the next few weeks, the fortress transformed from a prison into something Elena hadn't expected. A home. Not in the traditional sense. She still couldn't leave without security, still had to check in with Varela about her movements, still lived in a world where violence was a phone call away. But the subtle shifts made all the difference. Varela started including her in decisions. What art to buy for the empty spaces? What menu Francesca should plan for the week? Whether to attend events or send regrets. Small things that gave Elena the illusion of partnership. You're manipulating me, she accused one evening as they reviewed invitations together. I'm giving you agency, he corrected. There's a difference. Is there? Or are you just making me complicit in this life so I feel too invested to leave? Varela set down the invitation he'd been reading. You want brutal honesty? Always. Yes, part of me hopes that giving you choices will make you want to stay. But mostly I'm doing it because watching you slowly come back to life after months of looking half dead is the best thing that's happened to me in years. He reached across the table for her hand. I like seeing you smile. Hearing you argue with me. Knowing that when I come home you'll be here because you want to be, not because guards are preventing you from running. Elena squeezed his fingers. You're getting soft. Dangerously so. He smiled, and the expression transformed his face into something almost boyish. My associates have noticed, apparently I'm less terrifying when I'm distracted by a wife I actually like. Poor you, losing your fearsome reputation. I'll survive, especially since I just executed 4 people last month for the security breach. Word spreads quickly when consequences are final. The casual mention of killing should have bothered Elena more than it did. Instead, she found herself asking, did you find out who gave them information? One of my accountants. He had debts. Made a deal with competitors to provide access schedules in exchange for payment. Varela's expression went cold. Marco found him 2 days after the attack. He didn't enjoy his last hours. I should feel something about that. Guilt or horror or... But you don't. No, I feel satisfied. Is that wrong? In most worlds, yes. In ours? He shrugged. It's survival. You're adapting to the rules that keep you alive. That night, Elena stood in front of the mirror while Francesca helped her into another formal gown. This one silver, cut low in the back, designed to make statements. Another gala, another performance. But this time felt different. You look happy, Francesca observed, adjusting the dress's shoulders. I look expensive. That too, but also happy. It's in your eyes, the way you hold yourself. The older woman smiled. Mr. Varela has noticed. He can't stop looking at you lately. Elena felt her cheeks warm. We've reached an understanding. I'd call it more than understanding, dear, but we'll use your word if it makes you comfortable. Francesca stepped back, evaluating her work. There. Perfect. He won't be able to think straight all evening. She was right. When Elena descended the stairs to find Varela waiting in the foyer, his expression went slack for just a moment before the control snapped back into place. You're trying to kill me, he said, just trying to look the part. You're succeeding, devastatingly. He offered his arm. Ready to perform? Ready to stand beside you. There's a difference. This gala was smaller than the first, 50 people instead of hundreds, held in a private villa overlooking the coast. Elena recognized some faces from previous events. They recognized her too, but the assessment in their eyes had changed. Less mockery, more wariness. Word had spread about the attack, about Varela's response, about the fact that his purchased wife was now clearly his actual wife. Mrs. Varela, how lovely to see you again. The woman from the first gala, the one who'd asked invasive questions, her smile was more genuine this time, or at least more careful. And you, Elena replied smoothly, I hope you've been well. Quite. Though I must say marriage clearly agrees with you. You're positively glowing. Thank you. Dominic takes good care of me. I'm sure he does. The woman's eyes flicked to Varela, who stood close enough to hear every word. You're a lucky woman. I know, Elena said, and meant it. Later, dancing with Varela while a string quartet played something classical and beautiful, Elena felt the last pieces of her resistance crumble. What are you thinking? He asked, his hand warm at her waist. That this should feel wrong. That I should hate every second of being here, playing this role, pretending we're normal. But I don't hate it. I don't even mind it anymore. She looked up at him. When did that happen? Probably the same time I stopped seeing you as a strategic acquisition and started seeing you as someone I'd burn the world down for. That's dramatic. I'm a dramatic person. You'll get used to it. The song ended. Another began. They kept dancing. 3 days later, Elena woke feeling wrong. Not sick exactly, but off. Her body felt foreign, her stomach unsettled in a way that had nothing to do with food. She made it to the bathroom before vomiting, her body rejecting the breakfast she'd barely touched. Elena? Varela's voice through the door, concerned. I'm fine, just give me a minute. But it happened again the next morning, and the morning after that. By the fourth day, Francesca cornered her in the kitchen with knowing eyes and a knowing smile. How late are you, dear? Elena froze. What? Your cycle, when was your last one? The question hit like a physical blow. Elena's mind raced backward, counting days, counting weeks. She'd been so distracted by the attack, by Varela, by the shift in their relationship that she hadn't noticed. 6 weeks. Maybe 7? Oh, God, she whispered. Francesca squeezed her shoulder gently. There are tests in the upstairs bathroom, the cabinet under the sink. I keep them stocked for, well, just in case. Elena took 3 tests, all positive, all screaming the same impossible truth in clinical blue lines. She was pregnant. For 20 minutes, she sat on the bathroom floor, the tests lined up on the tile beside her like evidence at a crime scene. Her mind couldn't process it, couldn't move past the simple, overwhelming fact. There was a life growing inside her. Varela's child, a baby that hadn't asked to be born into this world of violence and moral ambiguity. Elena, Francesca said you were... Varela stopped in the doorway, taking in the scene, the tests, her face, the way she was hugging her knees like she could make herself small enough to disappear. Oh, I'm pregnant, Elena said numbly. We're going to have a baby. He sat down beside her, his usual composure cracking. How long have you known? 20 minutes? Maybe less. I can't. Her breath hitched. This wasn't supposed to happen. We haven't exactly been careful. I know, I just didn't think... Elena pressed her hands to her face. What are we going to do? Varela was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, What do you want to do? Don't put this on me. Don't make this my choice alone. It's not yours alone. But you're the one carrying it. You get the deciding vote. His hand found hers. Whatever you choose, I'll support it. If you want to end it, I'll arrange the best doctors. If you want to keep it, His voice cracked. I'll figure out how to be a father. Elena turned to look at him. You want this baby. I want you. If you come with a child, then yes, I want that too. He squeezed her hand. But more than that, I want you to want it. Not because you feel obligated or trapped. Because you actually want to bring a life into this world. Our world. Such as it is. It's a terrible world to bring a child into. It's the only one we have. Elena closed her eyes, trying to imagine it. A baby. Hers and Varela's. Growing up in this fortress, surrounded by security and secrets. Learning young that their father was someone people feared, that their mother had been bought like property, but also growing up loved, protected, given everything she and Varela had been denied in their own childhoods. I want to keep it, she heard herself say. I'm terrified and unprepared and have no idea how to be a mother, but I want this baby. Varela pulled her into his arms, and Elena felt him shaking. Thank you, he whispered into her hair. Thank you. For what? For choosing to stay. For choosing us. for giving me something I never thought I'd have. That evening, Varela canceled all his meetings. They sat in the garden while the sun set, Elena curled against him, his hand resting protectively over her still flat stomach. "We'll need to make changes," he said quietly. "The business, some of it needs to go. The riskier operations. The things that make me a target. You don't have to see—" "Yes, I do. I won't have our child grow up wondering if today's the day someone finally succeeds in killing their father." His jaw tightened. "I've been looking for a way out anyway. This just gives me the push I needed." "What will you do instead?" "Legitimize. Invest in legal ventures. Use the connections I've built for something that won't end with me in prison or dead." He looked down at her. "It won't be fast. Could take years. But I'll do it. For you. For this." Elena pressed her hand over his. "That's a big promise. I've made bigger. And kept them." Over the next week, Elena watched Varela transform. Not dramatically, he was still dangerous, still commanded fear and respect in equal measure. But the sharp edges softened slightly. He came home earlier, touched her stomach like it held something precious and fragile. Started talking about the future in terms of years instead of days. "We should get married again," he said one night. Elena looked up from the book she'd been pretending to read. "We're already married." "We should do it properly, with your father there, with witnesses who aren't on my payroll. Make it real in a way that matters to you." "You think a ceremony will erase how we started?" "No, but it might add something worth remembering alongside it." He moved to sit beside her on the bed. "I want our child to grow up knowing their parents chose each other, eventually, in their own broken way. We are broken, aren't we?" "Completely." He kissed her temple. "But we're broken in ways that fit together." 2 months into the pregnancy, Elena started showing. Just a slight curve that could be mistaken for bloating, but she knew. Varela knew. And apparently so did everyone else at the next business dinner they attended. "Congratulations are in order, I hear," one of Varela's associates said, his eyes dropping meaningfully to Elena's stomach. "Thank you," Varela replied, his hand possessive at Elena's waist. "Didn't waste any time, did you? Marriage and a baby within 6 months, almost like you planned it." The implication hung in the air. Elena felt Varela tense beside her. "Almost like we're married and in love," she cut in smoothly. "Novel concept, I know, but we're making it work." The man laughed uncomfortably. "Of course. My apologies." Later in the car, Varela asked, "Does it bother you when they imply things?" "It used to. Now I just feel sorry for them. They can't imagine that someone might actually fall for you once they get past the terrifying exterior." "Have you fallen for me?" Elena thought about lying, decided against it. "Yes, somewhere between you killing for me and promising to rebuild your life for our child. It's inconvenient and probably psychologically unhealthy, but yes." "I fell for you at the auction," Varela admitted. "When you looked at me like you weren't impressed by the money or the power, like you saw through all of it to something worth hating. No one had looked at me that way in years, like I was human enough to disappoint. And now? Now you look at me like I'm human enough to love, which is infinitely more terrifying." That night, Elena woke to Varela's side of the bed empty. She found him in the nursery they'd started preparing, a room that had been storage, now painted soft gray with clouds on the ceiling and furniture that cost more than her father's apartment. He stood at the window, staring out at the sea. "Can't sleep?" she asked from the doorway. "I keep thinking about all the ways I could fail at this, at being a father, at keeping you both safe, at becoming someone worthy of the family I'm building." Elena moved to stand beside him. "You're already worthy, flawed and dangerous and morally questionable, but worthy. Your standards are alarmingly low. My standards are realistic. I'm not asking you to be perfect. Just present, just trying." She took his hand. "That's all any parent can do." "What if I'm too broken? What if I pass on all the damage and none of the strength?" "Then we'll deal with it together. Therapy exists for a reason." She smiled. "Besides, our child will have me. I'll balance out your intensity with literature and good sense." "Literature and good sense," Varela repeated, pulling her into his arms, "against a lifetime of violence and moral compromise. That seems fair?" 3 weeks later, everything changed again. Elena was in the library when Varela burst in, his face pale, his movements urgent. Pack a bag, just essentials. We need to leave. Now. What? Why? Someone leaked information about you, about the pregnancy. It's spreading through channels I can't control. His hands shook as he pulled her toward the stairs. My enemies now know the fastest way to destroy me. We need to get you somewhere safe until I can eliminate the threat. Dominic, you're scaring me. Good. You should be scared. There are people who'd kill you just to watch me suffer, people who'd take our child. He couldn't finish. They were halfway up the stairs when Elena heard it. A sound like thunder, but wrong. Too sharp. Too close. Explosion. The world tilted. Varela threw himself over her as debris rained down. Somewhere, alarms shrieked. Smoke filled the air, acrid and choking. Elena, are you hurt? She couldn't hear him properly. Her ears rang with a high-pitched whine that drowned everything else. But she could see his mouth moving, see the panic in his eyes. The baby, she managed. Is the baby? We need to move. Now. He pulled her up, supporting her weight. Can you walk? Elena nodded, though her legs felt like water. They stumbled through smoke and chaos, Varela's arm locked around her waist. Security was shouting. Marco appeared from somewhere, blood running down his face, gun in hand. East exit, he barked. Car's waiting. They made it to the garage, into a car that peeled out before Elena had even closed her door. She pressed both hands to her stomach, praying, begging the universe to let their child be okay. Where are we going? She asked, when she could speak again. Somewhere they won't think to look. Varela's jaw was set in stone. I have a place. Off the grid. No one knows about it except Marco. We'll be safe there. For how long? As long as it takes. He looked at her, and Elena saw murder in his eyes. I'm going to find everyone responsible for this. Everyone who knew. Everyone who helped. And I'm going to end them. Slowly. The safe house was 3 hours away, hidden in mountains Elena didn't recognize. Small. Sparse. Nothing like the fortress they'd left behind. Inside, Varela made her sit while he checked her over for injuries. His hands were gentle but thorough, looking for blood, for bruising, for any sign that the explosion had hurt her or the baby. I'm fine, Elena insisted. We're fine. You don't know that. I can feel it. The baby's okay. But Varela made calls anyway. Within an hour, a doctor arrived, someone he trusted, someone who asked no questions. The examination was brief but thorough. Heartbeat is strong, the doctor said, and Elena felt Varela sag with relief. No signs of trauma, but you'll need to take it easy for the next few days. No stress, plenty of rest. No stress? Elena repeated after the doctor left. In the middle of a war for our lives. Sure, I'll just relax. Varela pulled her into his arms. I'm sorry. I should have seen this coming. Should have protected you better. You saved us. You threw yourself over me without hesitation. Because losing you would end me. He pressed his face into her hair. Both of you. You're everything now. The only things that matter. That night, alone in a strange bed in a strange house, Elena felt fear catch up with her. The adrenaline faded, leaving only the crushing reality that someone had tried to kill her, that their child had been hours away from dying before ever being born. She cried for the first time since the auction. Great, heaving sobs that shook her whole body. Varela held her through it, stroking her hair, whispering promises in Italian that she only half understood. I'll fix this, he swore. I'll make them pay. And then I'll build you a life where you never have to be afraid again. I'm not afraid of dying, Elena said when she could speak. I'm afraid of our baby growing up without us, of them never knowing how hard we tried. They'll know, because we're going to survive this. All three of us. He tilted her face up to meet his eyes. I've survived worse. So have you. Together, we're damn near indestructible. Elena wanted to believe him, needed to believe him. So she did. Over the next week, Varela worked from the safe house, making calls that usually ended with someone on the other end agreeing to things they clearly didn't want to agree to. Marco came and went, reporting on movements, on investigations, on bodies that kept appearing in places that sent clear messages. How many? Elena asked one evening, watching Varela clean his gun at the kitchen table. How many what? How many people have you killed in the last week? He didn't lie to her. Never had. 4 personally, another 6 through intermediaries. 2 are still breathing but won't be by morning. 12 people. Dead because someone tried to hurt me. Dead because they chose to make you a target. He set down the gun. In my world, that choice has consequences. Final ones. Elena should have felt horror. Should have been repulsed. Instead, she felt protected. Safe. Like Varela was building a wall of bodies between her and anyone who dare threaten their family. I'm broken too, aren't I? She said quietly. Normal people don't feel grateful when their husband commits mass murder on their behalf. Normal people don't survive the auction. Don't adapt to my world. Don't fall in love with men like me. He crossed to where she sat. But you're not normal, Elena. You're extraordinary. And our child is going to be raised by 2 extraordinary, deeply damaged people who love them more than anything. That's the pitch? We're traumatized but devoted? It's honest. He knelt in front of her chair, his hands covering her stomach. I can't promise perfect, can't promise easy, but I can promise that no one will ever hurt you or this baby while I'm alive. That's worth something. It's worth everything, Elena admitted. 2 weeks after the explosion, Varela finally let Elena return to the fortress, or what was left of it. The east wing was destroyed, her beautiful library reduced to ash and rubble. The bedroom they'd shared was structurally unsound, but the rest stood, defiant and scarred, but standing. We'll rebuild, Varela said as they surveyed the damage. Better security, reinforced structures, things that can't be brought down by one well-placed bomb. Or we could leave, start over somewhere new. He looked at her. You'd want that? After everything here? This was never my home. You are. Elena took his hand, placed it over her growing stomach. Wherever we are together, that's home. The location doesn't matter. Something shifted in Varela's expression, decision crystallizing into certainty. Then we leave. As soon as you're cleared to travel, we go. Somewhere they won't find us, somewhere we can raise our child without looking over our shoulders every moment. What about your business? Marco can handle it. I'll stay involved remotely, but the day-to-day operations, I'm done. I've spent 15 years building an empire on violence. Time to build something else. Something our daughter deserves. Daughter? Elena smiled. We don't know that yet. I know, I can feel it. His hand pressed against her stomach. She's going to be fierce and brilliant and terrifying, just like her mother. That night they slept in a guest room that hadn't been damaged. Elena woke twice to find Varela awake, watching her with an intensity that should have been unsettling but instead felt like devotion. Can't sleep? She asked the second time. Don't want to. Don't want to miss a moment of knowing you're safe, that we made it through. He pulled her closer. I keep thinking about all the ways this could have gone wrong. How close I came to losing everything that matters. But you didn't. We're here. We're okay. For now. But there's still cleanup. Still threats I haven't neutralized. Elena propped herself up on one elbow. Then finish it. Do whatever you need to do to end this. I'll wait. I'll be safe with Marco, but don't hold back because you're afraid I can't handle the truth of what you are. You've seen what I am. I've seen parts. I can handle seeing the rest. She kissed him softly. End this war, Dominic. Then come back to me and we'll start our real life. The one where we're not constantly running or fighting or killing, just living. Just living, he repeated like the concept was foreign. I'm not sure I remember how. Then we'll learn together. 3 days later, Varela left. He kissed Elena goodbye in the pre-dawn darkness, promised to return within a week, and disappeared into the kind of violence he'd spent his whole life perfecting. Elena waited, tried to read, tried to prepare the nursery, even though they'd likely abandon this house soon, tried not to imagine all the ways Varela might not come back. On the 6th day, Marco appeared in the doorway, his expression unreadable. It's done, he said. Everyone involved is dead. Everyone who knew about the baby. Everyone who thought they could use you against him. It's finished. And Dominic? On his way back. He'll be here by morning. Marco allowed himself a small smile. He's ready to be done with all of this. ready to be just a husband and father instead of what he's been. Can people like him really change? People like him can try. Whether he succeeds, Marco shrugged. That's up to him. And you. And whatever grace exists in this ugly world. Varela came back at dawn, looking exhausted and blood-stained and more human than Elena had ever seen him. She met him at the door, not caring about the mess, just needing to touch him, confirm he was real and whole, and home. It's over, he said into her hair. Truly over. We're free. And for the first time since the auction, Elena believed it. They left Monaco 3 weeks later, once Varela had dismantled enough of his operations to make disappearing possible. The fortress sold to someone who asked no questions, probably because they were too afraid to. Most of the furniture stayed. Elena took only her books, the few photographs that mattered, and the ring Varela had placed on her finger in that chapel months ago. Where are we going? She asked as they drove away from the only home she'd known since the auction. Somewhere quiet, somewhere no one will think to look. Varela glanced at her, his hand finding hers across the console. Do you trust me? With my life, with our daughter's life. Then close your eyes. I want the first view to be a surprise. Elena closed her eyes, listening to the rhythm of tires on pavement, feeling the car climb and turn through roads she couldn't identify. After what felt like hours, they stopped. Okay, Varela said softly. Look. She opened her eyes to find herself staring at a house that was nothing like the fortress. Smaller, warmer, built of stone and wood instead of glass and steel. It sat on a hillside overlooking the ocean, but not in Monaco, somewhere quieter, greener, where the nearest neighbor was probably miles away. Behind the house, mountains rose like protective walls. It's in Corsica, Varela explained. Belonged to my mother's family before everything. I bought it back years ago, but never used it. Seemed too peaceful for someone like me. He looked at Elena. But maybe I'm not that person anymore, or I'm trying not to be. Elena stepped out of the car, breathing air that tasted like salt and pine and possibility. It's perfect. Wait until you see inside before you commit to perfect. The interior was smaller than the fortress, but somehow felt larger. Windows everywhere, letting in light that made the hardwood floors glow. A kitchen that opened onto a terrace. 3 bedrooms upstairs, one of which Varela had already started converting into a nursery. Books lined the shelves, not expensive collector's editions, but worn paperbacks that someone had actually read. These were my mother's, Varela said when he caught Elena examining them. She loved literature, used to read to me when I was young. Before my father, he stopped. Started again. I thought our daughter might like them someday. Elena pulled out a copy of Dante, the margins filled with notes in elegant script. She wrote in Italian. She was from Bastia, met my father when he was pretending to be something better than a gambler with debts. Varela took the book, his thumb tracing the handwriting. She died when I was 12. Heart gave out, but I think it was really just broken. He destroyed everything she loved by then, including herself. I'm sorry. Don't be. She's the reason I know it's possible to be better. She chose my father despite everything he was. Thought love could fix him. He set the book back on the shelf. It didn't. But maybe that's because he didn't want to be fixed. I do. For you. For our child. For the version of myself I see reflected in your eyes. They spent the first week settling in. Francesca had come with them, refusing to stay behind, claiming she was too old to train a new employer. Marco visited twice, bringing updates about the businesses Varela was systematically legitimizing or selling off. Each day, Varela seemed lighter, less controlled, more like the boy in that photograph from his office. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, Elena admitted one evening as they sat on the terrace watching the sunset. 6 months pregnant now, her stomach round and impossible to hide. For someone to find us. For this peace to be temporary. It might be, Varela said honestly. People like me don't usually get happy endings. But we can have this, for as long as we can hold on to it. That's not very reassuring. Would you prefer a lie? Elena considered. No, I prefer this. The truth, however uncertain. She took his hand, placed it on her stomach where their daughter was kicking. Feel that? Varella's expression transformed into something Elena had never seen before, pure, uncomplicated joy. She's strong, takes after her father. I hope she takes after you. The part of you that survived the auction and didn't break. That chose to stay when you could have found a way to leave. That's the strength I want her to inherit. A month before Elena's due date, her father called. Varela had given her a new phone, untraceable, with exactly 3 numbers programmed, his, Marco's, and Giovanni's. She'd stared at the last one for weeks before finally using it. Elena? Her father's voice sounded older, smaller. Is it really you? It's me, Papa. I've been trying to find you. Ever since the explosion, I've been calling the fortress, but no one would tell me anything. I was afraid. I'm fine. We moved, started over somewhere new. Silence. Then, we? Dominic and I, and Elena took a breath. And your granddaughter. She's due in 4 weeks. The sound Giovanni made was somewhere between a sob and a laugh. A granddaughter, Elena, I don't know what to say. I don't deserve to. No, you don't. Elena's voice was steady. You sold me to save yourself. You made me property. You destroyed the life I was supposed to have. I know. I live with that every day. If I could take it back, but you can't. And I can't forgive you. Not completely. Not yet. Maybe not ever. She looked at Varela, who was watching her with patient understanding. But I'm calling because despite everything, you're still my father. And I want my daughter to know her grandfather, on my terms, when I'm ready, if you can accept that. Yes, anything, whatever terms you want. Just let me be part of her life, please. I'll think about it. I'll call you after she's born. We'll figure it out then. She hung up before he could say anything else. Varela crossed the room, pulled her into his arms. That was brave. That was necessary. I can't hold on to the anger forever. It's exhausting. Forgiveness isn't the same as forgetting. I know, but maybe it's a start. Elena pressed her face into his chest. Tell me I'm not making a mistake. Letting him back in. I can't tell you that. He might disappoint you again. Might prove he hasn't changed. Varela's hand stroked her hair. But you're giving him a chance to be better. Same chance you gave me. That's not weakness. That's grace. 3 weeks later, Elena's water broke at 2 a.m. She woke Varela with a hand on his shoulder and 3 words that sent him into controlled panic. It's time. She's coming. They'd prepared for this. Had a doctor on call, a birthing plan, every possible scenario accounted for. But standing in their bedroom with contractions starting to build, Elena felt the weight of how real this was, how final. In a few hours, she'd be someone's mother, responsible for a life she'd helped create with a man she'd been forced to marry and somehow chosen to love. Breathe, Varela said, though he looked like he was the one who needed the reminder. Just breathe. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. The labor was long, painful. Elena had refused heavy medication, wanting to feel it all, wanting to earn the title of mother through the same pain her own mother had endured for her. Varela stayed beside her the entire time, letting her break his hand with her grip, whispering encouragement in Italian when the pain got too bad for English. You're stronger than this, he kept saying. You survived me. You can survive anything. 16 hours after it started, their daughter entered the world screaming her fury at the cold and the light and the injustice of being born. The doctor placed her on Elena's chest, tiny and red and absolutely perfect in her imperfection. She's here, Elena sobbed, touching the impossibly small fingers, the shock of dark hair, the face that was somehow both hers and Varela's and entirely her own. She's actually here. Varela stood beside the bed, tears streaming down his face without shame or apology. What's her name? They'd debated this for months. Elena had wanted something Italian, to honor Varela's mother. He'd wanted something that meant hope or new beginning. In the end, they'd chosen both. Chiara, Elena said, looking at their daughter. Chiara Sofia Varela. Clear. Bright. Varela touched his daughter's cheek with one finger, his hand shaking. Perfect. She's perfect. The first week was chaos. Kiara slept in 2-hour increments, which meant no one else slept either. Elena's body ached in new ways, healing from the trauma of birth while learning to feed a tiny human who seemed perpetually hungry. Varela was useless with diapers, but excelled at walking the hallways at 3 a.m., singing Italian lullabies Elena had never heard him sing before. "Where did you learn those?" she asked one night, finding him swaying in the nursery with Chiara against his shoulder. "My mother. I'd forgotten them until now. Funny how things come back when you need them." Francesca ran the household with quiet efficiency, bringing food Elena barely tasted, cleaning things that didn't need cleaning, giving advice only when asked. Marco visited once, bringing gifts that looked like they'd been chosen by someone who'd never met a baby. A knife with Chiara's name engraved on it, a savings bond worth more than most people's houses, a stuffed bear that cost more than it should. "For protection," he explained, gesturing at the knife. "When she's older." "She's 3 days old, Marco." "Then she has time to grow into it." At 2 weeks, Elena called her father. "Papa, we're ready. If you want to meet her." Giovanni arrived the next day, looking smaller than Elena remembered, older. When he saw Chiara, he wept openly, not bothering to hide it. "She looks like you did," he said, his voice breaking. "When you were born, same nose, same serious expression. You can hold her, if you're careful." He took the baby like she was made of glass, settling into the chair Elena indicated. Chiara stared up at her grandfather with dark, unfocused eyes, and Elena watched something in her father's face crack open. "I'm so sorry," Giovanni whispered, though Elena wasn't sure if he was talking to her or to Chiara. "For everything, for all of it. You deserve better than what I gave you." "Yes," Elena agreed. "I did, but I survived it, and I'm building something better now. You can be part of that, but Papa—" She waited until he looked at her. "One mistake. One moment of putting yourself first or putting her at risk, and you're gone. Forever. Do you understand?" "I understand. I swear to you, Elena, I'll be better. I'll be the grandfather she deserves." Varela watched the interaction from the doorway, his expression unreadable. Later, when Giovanni had left and Chiara was sleeping, Elena found him in his office, staring at nothing. "You okay?" she asked. "I keep thinking about my father, what he did to me, how he chose his debts over my life." Varela looked at her. "And I wonder if I'm capable of being better, or if that damage is hereditary." Elena crossed the room, took his face in her hands. "You're already better. You chose us over your empire, over your reputation, over everything you spent years building. That's not nothing. What if it's not enough? Then we'll figure it out, together." She kissed him softly. "You're not your father, Dominic. You're choosing differently. That's all any of us can do." The months passed in a blur of sleepless nights and small miracles. Chiara's first smile, her first laugh. The day she rolled over and Varela called Elena from 3 rooms away like it was the moon landing. They celebrated holidays quietly, just the 3 of them, Francesca, and occasionally Marco. No parties, no galas, no performances for people who measured worth in euros and fear. On Chiara's first birthday, they held a party in the garden. Giovanni came bringing gifts he'd clearly agonized over. Marco brought more impractical weapons disguised as toys. Francesca baked a cake that Chiara mostly smeared in her hair. "This is good," Elena said that night, watching Varela clean frosting off their daughter while Chiara giggled and squirmed. "This life, this family, it's good. It's better than I deserve. Stop saying that. You're earning it every day." Elena moved to help him, taking Chiara's other hand. "Look at her. She's happy, safe, loved. That's what matters." "I still have nightmares," Varela admitted, "about the auction, about you on that platform, about the man I was who could look at another human being and see property. That man is dead. You killed him when you chose to let me choose you." "Did I? Or is he just sleeping, waiting for the moment I slip back into old patterns?" Elena set down the washcloth, giving him her full attention. "Listen to me. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to lose your temper. You're going to have moments where the violence feels easier than the peace. That's being human. That's being damaged. But you're not going to become that man again because you have something he never had. What? A reason to be better. Two reasons, actually. She gestured at herself and Kiara. We're your reason. And as long as you remember that, you'll find your way back every time you get lost. 2 years after leaving Monaco, Varella's transformation was complete. He'd sold every illegal operation, invested the money into legitimate businesses that actually helped people, affordable housing, education programs, microloans for entrepreneurs. The fortune was still massive, but it was clean, legal, something their daughter could inherit without shame. I got a call today, he said one evening while they watched Kiara play with blocks on the living room floor. From the prosecutor in Milan, the one who's been investigating my old associates. Elena's stomach clenched. And? He wanted to thank me. Apparently the information I've been providing helped him make 17 arrests. People who thought they were untouchable. Varela smiled without humor. Turns out I'm more dangerous as a witness than I ever was as a criminal. You testified against them? Anonymously, through sealed depositions, but yes, I gave them everything they needed to dismantle what I used to be part of. Elena processed this. That's dangerous. It's necessary. I can't build a clean life on a foundation of bodies and silence. Eventually, that catches up to you. He looked at Kiara, who was babbling to her blocks like they were old friends. I want her to grow up knowing her father tried to fix his mistakes, even if he couldn't erase them. That night, after Kiara was asleep and the house was quiet, Elena found herself thinking about the girl she'd been. 22, naive, certain that the world made sense if you just followed the rules. That version of herself seemed like a stranger now, someone who'd existed in a different lifetime. Do you ever regret it? Varela asked from beside her in bed. Staying, choosing this life. Every day, Elena admitted. And also, never. It's both things at once. That doesn't make sense. Nothing about us makes sense. We're a crime boss and his purchased wife who somehow turned into a family. We're built on trauma and bad choices and moral compromise, but we're also real, and we're trying, and some days that feels like enough. Varela pulled her closer. Some days I look at you and can't believe you're real, that you chose to stay, that you gave me a daughter and a reason to be human again. Some days I look at you and can't believe I fell in love with the man who bought me at an auction. Elena tilted her head to look at him. But here we are, broken and trying and somehow making it work. Somehow making it work, Varela repeated. That should be our family motto. When Kiara turned 3, Elena started writing again. Not literature analysis like she'd studied in university, but something else. A memoir about survival and choice and learning to build a life from the wreckage of someone else's mistakes. She didn't know if she'd ever publish it. Didn't know if the world needed another story about trauma repackaged as redemption. But writing it helped. Made sense of the senseless. Varela found her one afternoon, typing furiously while Kiara napped. What are you working on? Our story. Or my version of it, anyway. Can I read it? Elena hesitated. It's not pretty. I don't make us look like heroes, just people trying to survive the consequences of other people's choices. That's accurate? He sat beside her. Read me something. So she did. A passage about the auction, about standing on that platform and feeling her humanity drain away with every bid, about seeing Varela and knowing her life was ending and beginning in the same moment. When she finished, Varela was quiet for a long time. You should publish it, he said finally. Under what name? Elena Varela, wife of a reformed crime boss? That'll go over well. Under your maiden name, Elena Rossi, the girl who survived, who chose to build something better from the worst moment of her life. He took her hand. People need to know that survival isn't always pretty, that sometimes you have to make peace with monsters to stay alive. And sometimes those monsters turn out to be just men, damaged, trying men. You really think people would want to read this? I think people need to read it, because the world is full of Elenas who think they have no choice, who believe survival means surrender. Your story proves otherwise. Elena published the book under a pseudonym 2 years later. It sold modestly, not a bestseller, but enough to matter. She donated the proceeds to organizations that help trafficked women, that fought the kind of trade that had almost destroyed her. Varela matched her donations dollar for dollar, anonymously, because despite everything he'd become, he still understood the power of money to change lives. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Varela took Elena back to the chapel where they'd married. Not to renew vows. Those had been real the first time, however forced. But to say them again, this time meaning every word. I, Dominic, take you, Elena, to be my wife, my choice, my partner, the woman who saw the worst of me and decided I was worth saving anyway. I, Elena, take you, Dominic, to be my husband, my choice, my partner, the man who gave me hell and then built me a heaven from the ashes. They kissed in the same chapel, before the same priest, but everything else was different, better, real. That night, lying in bed in the house that had become their home, Elena felt something she'd thought impossible during those first months after the auction. Contentment. I'm happy, she said, surprised by the realization. Actually happy. Not pretending or coping or surviving, just happy. Varela propped himself up on one elbow, studying her face in the moonlight. You should be. You've earned it. We've earned it. I'm still not convinced I deserve you, or Chiara, or this life. Stop waiting for permission to be happy, Dominic. Just be happy. It's allowed. He kissed her, slow and deep and full of all the things they'd built together from ruins and wreckage. Okay, I'll try. That's all I ask. Just keep trying. When Chiara turned 6, she started asking questions about how Mama and Papa met. Elena and Varela had prepared for this, had discussed how much truth a child could handle, when to reveal the darker parts of their history. We met at a party, Elena told her, which was technically true. In Monaco. It was very fancy. And Papa saw you and fell in love, Chiara asked, her dark eyes, so like her father's, wide with 6-year-old romanticism. Something like that. It was more complicated, Varela added, earning a look from Elena. But he continued, crouching to Chiara's level. Sometimes people meet in difficult ways, in situations that aren't fair. But if they choose to make something good from something bad, that's what matters. I don't understand. You will. When you're older. For now, just know that Mama and I chose each other. Every day we choose each other. And we chose to have you. And that's the important part. Chiara seemed satisfied with this answer, running off to play with the elaborate dollhouse Marco had built her, complete with tiny security cameras and a panic room, because of course. She's going to figure it out eventually, Elena said once Chiara was out of earshot. I know. And when she does, we'll tell her the truth. That people are complicated. That her parents started in darkness but built toward light. That nothing about us is simple, but all of it is real. Think she'll understand? She's our daughter. She'll understand more than we think. 10 years after the auction, Elena stood in the garden of their Corsican house, watching Varela teach a 10-year-old Chiara how to defend herself. Not with weapons, those would come later if she chose, but with her body, her voice, her absolute refusal to be a victim. Louder, Varela instructed as Chiara practiced screaming. Make them hear you 3 streets away. Make them know you're not easy prey. Like this? Chiara screamed with everything she had, and birds exploded from nearby trees. Perfect. Again. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. This was why they'd survived, why they'd clawed their way from that auction room to this moment, so their daughter could grow up knowing she had a voice, had choices, had parents who'd fight wars to keep her safe and free. You're crying, Francesca observed, appearing beside her with tea Elena hadn't asked for, but appreciated anyway. Happy tears, mostly. He's a good father, better than anyone expected. He's better than he expected, that's what matters. They watched Varela scoop up Chiara when the lesson was done, spinning her until she shrieked with laughter. The man who'd once killed without hesitation now couldn't bear to see his daughter sad. The transformation was complete. Or as complete as it could be for someone who'd lived the life he'd lived. That evening, after Chiara was asleep and the house was quiet, Varela found Elena in the library, the one he'd rebuilt book by book, replacing what had been destroyed in Monaco. I have something for you, he said, holding out a small box. Elena opened it to find a key. Old, tarnished, clearly antique. What's this? The key to the house where I was born, in Bastia. I tracked down the current owner, made them an offer they couldn't refuse. He smiled at her raised eyebrow. A legal offer. Very boring, very legitimate. The house is yours now, ours. I thought maybe we could restore it. Give Chiara a connection to the family she never knew. Elena closed her fingers around the key. You're giving me your history. I'm giving you everything. Have been since the moment I realized you were more than strategic acquisition, more than insurance, more than anything I'd planned for. When was that moment exactly? Varela thought about it. The auction. When you looked at me like I was human enough to hate. No one had looked at me that way in years. Everyone else just saw money or power or something to fear. You saw a person, a terrible person, but still a person. That's when I knew you were dangerous. Dangerous how? Dangerous to everything I'd built my life around, the walls, the control, the certainty that I was better off alone. He pulled her into his arms. You demolished all of it without even trying, just by being stubbornly, impossibly, brilliantly human. Elena pressed her face into his chest, breathing in the scent of him, familiar now, comforting, home. I hated you for so long. I know. And then I didn't, and I couldn't figure out when that changed. Does it matter? She considered. No, I suppose it doesn't. We're here now. That's what matters. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the library filled with books and memories and the quiet evidence of lives rebuilt from ashes. Outside, the sea whispered against the rocks. Inside, their daughter slept safely, dreaming whatever 6-year-olds dreamed, protected by parents who'd walked through fire to give her a life unmarked by their sins. It wasn't a fairy tale, wasn't even entirely redemption, but it was real. It was earned. It was theirs. And some days, that was more than enough. Some days, it was everything. 12 years after the auction, Elena received a letter. It was forwarded through so many channels that the original postmark was obscured, but the handwriting was familiar. Her father's. She opened it carefully, aware of Varela watching from across the room. Dear Elena, I'm writing this from a hospital in Milan. The doctors say I have maybe 6 months. Cancer, lungs. I suppose that's what 40 years of smoking gets you. I don't expect you to care. Don't expect forgiveness or tears or a deathbed reconciliation. I know what I am, what I did. Selling you was the worst thing I've ever done, and I've done terrible things. But I wanted you to know, seeing you with Chiara these past years, watching you build a family from the wreckage I created, that's been my redemption. Not mine to claim, but mine to witness. You took the worst moment of your life and transformed it into something beautiful. That's not me. That's all you. Thank you for letting me be her grandfather, for giving me more than I deserved. I'll die knowing I destroyed my daughter but helped raise my granddaughter. It's more grace than most men in my position receive. Tell Chiara I love her. Tell her Nono tried to be better at the end. I'm sorry. For everything. Forever sorry. Papa Elena read the letter 3 times before handing it to Varela. He read it once, his expression unreadable. Then he asked, What do you want to do? I want to see him. One more time. Not to forgive, I'm not sure I can do that completely, but to say goodbye. To let him see what came from his worst choice. I'll arrange it. We'll go together, as a family. They traveled to Milan 2 weeks later. Giovanni was exactly where the letter said. A hospital room overlooking the city Elena had once called home. He looked smaller than ever, eaten away by disease and regret, but his eyes lit up when they entered. Elena, you came. I came. She settled into the chair beside his bed while Varela stood by the door, Chiara between them. Papa, this is Chiara, your granddaughter, really here, really meeting you, not just video calls. Giovanni's eyes filled. She's so big, so beautiful. Come here, little one. Let Nonno look at you. Chiara approached cautiously, taking the old man's weathered hand. Mama says you're sick. Very sick, but seeing you makes me feel better. That's not how medicine works. Giovanni laughed, which turned into a cough. No, I suppose it's not, but it's true anyway. They stayed for an hour. Giovanni told Chiara stories about Elena as a child, the books she'd loved, the drawings she'd made, the way she'd questioned everything, even at 6 years old. Elena let him talk, watching her father and daughter together, feeling the complicated tangle of love and anger and grief that had no clean resolution. When they left, Giovanni caught Elena's hand. "Thank you," he whispered, "for being better than me, for surviving what I did to you, for making something beautiful from something terrible. Goodbye, Papa. Goodbye, little one." He died 3 weeks later. Elena cried at the funeral, not for the father he'd been, but for the one he might have become if he'd made different choices. Varela held her through it, solid and steady, while Chiara placed flowers on a grave for a grandfather she'd barely known but would remember kindly. "You okay?" Varela asked on the drive home. "I will be, eventually." Elena looked out at the landscape passing by. Italy giving way to France, France giving way to Corsica, distance giving way to home. He gave me life and then destroyed it, but from that destruction came you, came Chiara, came everything I have now. I don't know how to feel about that. Feel however you feel. There's no right answer. I'm grateful and angry and sad all at once. Then be all those things. You're allowed. That night, Elena stood in Chiara's doorway, watching her daughter sleep. 12 years old now, growing into someone fierce and brilliant and completely herself. She had Varela's eyes and Elena's stubborn chin and a spirit that belonged to no one but her. "She's going to do great things," Varela said from behind her. "She's going to have choices, real ones. That's all I want for her. She'll have more than that. She'll have parents who fought like hell to give her a clean slate. That counts for something." Elena leaned back into him. "Do you ever think about the man you were? The one who bought me? Every day. He's part of me. Will always be part of me. But he's not in control anymore." Varela's arms wrapped around her. "That man wanted power. This one just wants you and Chiara and the life we've built. It's a better trade." "The best trade," Elena agreed. 15 years after the auction, Elena published her second book. This one wasn't about survival. It was about transformation, about choosing to build something good from something terrible, about learning to love the person who hurt you after they've become someone different. It was controversial. Some readers called it Stockholm Syndrome disguised as romance. Others called it honest. Elena didn't care either way. She'd written it for herself, for Chiara, for anyone who needed to know that healing wasn't linear, and redemption wasn't clean, and sometimes love grew in the darkest soil. Varela read it in one sitting, then found Elena in the garden. "You made me cry," he said, which was as close to vulnerable as he usually got. Good crying or bad crying? Grateful crying, for being seen, for being given a chance to be more than my worst choices? He sat beside her on the bench they'd installed years ago. "I don't deserve the way you write about me. The grace you extend. You've earned it. Every day for 15 years you've earned it." "Have I? Or have I just been lucky enough to love someone who sees potential instead of pattern?" Elena took his hand. "Both. It's both things. You're doing the work. I'm recognizing the effort. That's how it works." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the sea, painting the sky in colors that didn't have names. "I love you," Varela said. Simple. Direct. True. "I know, I love you too, even when I don't want to. Even when the rational part of my brain reminds me how we started. I love you anyway." Anyway is the best kind of love. The most honest kind, at least. On their 20th anniversary, Elena and Varela returned to the chapel one final time. Not to renew vows again, but to attend Mass, something neither of them had done in years, but Chiara had requested, curious about the faith her grandmother had held. The priest who'd married them was gone, replaced by a younger man who didn't know their history. He spoke about forgiveness and grace and second chances, and Elena felt Varela's hand tighten on hers. After, they walked through Monaco's streets, older now, different, but still recognizable. The auction house where it had all started was gone, torn down and replaced by something innocuous. A bank, maybe. Or office space. The kind of building that held no memories. "Do you ever regret it?" Elena asked, standing where the entrance had been. "That night, buying me, starting all of this." Varela considered the question seriously. "I regret the circumstances. Regret that you had no choice. Regret every moment you were afraid or angry or convinced I was a monster. He turned to face her. But regret having you in my life? Regret Kiara? Regret becoming someone worthy of the family we built? Never, not for a second. Good answer. It's an honest answer. They walked back to their car hand in hand, two people who'd survived the worst and built the best from its ruins. 25 years after the auction, Elena stood in her garden, older now, graying at the temples, lines around her eyes from years of laughter and tears in life, and watched Kiara marry the woman she loved. A beautiful ceremony, full of joy and choice and everything Elena had fought to give her daughter. Varela cried openly, not bothering to hide it. Our baby, he kept saying. Our baby is so happy. She is, Elena agreed, her own tears falling freely. We did good, Dominic. Despite everything, we did good. We did better than good. We did impossible. The reception lasted until dawn, dancing and speeches and toasts to love that chooses itself. Elena danced with Varela like they had at that first gala decades ago, but nothing was performance now, just two people who'd walked through fire and come out holding hands. 25 years, Varela mused. Quarter of a century since I made the best worst decision of my life. Best worst decision? Buying you was terrible, wrong, unforgivable, but it brought me you, brought me everything I have now, so it's the best terrible thing I've ever done. Elena laughed. That's twisted logic. We're twisted people. It fits. As the sun rose over the mountains, Elena found herself thinking about that girl on the auction platform. 22 and terrified and certain her life was ending. If she could go back and tell that girl what was coming, the fear and the anger and the slow transformation from captive to partner, to wife to mother, would that girl have believed her? Probably not. But she would have survived it anyway, because survival was what Elena Rossi, Elena Varela, did best. And in the end, she'd done more than survive. She'd lived. 30 years after the auction, Elena and Varela sat on their terrace watching the sunset. Older now, slower, carrying the weight of lives fully lived. Kiara visited weekly with her wife and their adopted children, two beautiful boys who called Elena Nona and climbed all over Varela like he was their personal jungle gym. We're grandparents, Varela said, marveling at the title. I never thought I'd live long enough to be a grandfather. You never thought you'd live long enough to be happy. That too. He took her hand, still wearing the platinum band from that forced wedding 30 years ago, now joined by an eternity band he'd given her on their 10th anniversary. Thank you. For what? For staying, for choosing me after you didn't have to, for building this life even when it would have been easier to run. Running would have been easier in the short term. This, Elena gestured at the house, the garden, the life they'd created. This was worth the work. They sat in comfortable silence as the sky turned pink and gold and purple. Behind them, the house was full of noise, grandchildren playing, Chiara and her wife cooking dinner, Francesca directing traffic like she'd been doing for 3 decades. If you could go back, Varela asked quietly, back to that night, knowing everything that was coming, would you? Elena thought about it, really thought about it. No, I wouldn't change it, because changing it means losing this, losing you, losing Chiara, losing everything we built. The auction was terrible. Those first months were hell, but they led here, to this moment, to you and me and our family, and I wouldn't trade that for anything. Even for freedom? For the life you were supposed to have? This is the life I was supposed to have. It just took a horrible detour to get here. She squeezed his hand. Besides, freedom is overrated. I'd rather have love. Varela pulled her close, and they watched the sun sink into the sea together. Two people who'd started in darkness and built their way to light. Two people who'd survived the unforgivable and created something worth forgiving. Not a fairy tale, not redemption, just life. Messy and complicated and real. And in the end, that was more than enough. It was everything.